Radnor Township Planning Commission meeting. We will start this evening with review of the minutes from the July meeting. Any comments or a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Our first item on the agenda is public hearing amending the 2003 Comprehensive Plan of Radnor Township by adding and incorporating the Garrett Hill Master Plan of July 21st, 2008. And before I start, just let me get a feel for the audience who's here tonight for what. We have the comprehensive plan. Just raise your hands if you're here for that. Thank you. Eastern University has tabled to September, so if you're here for Eastern, we're not going to discuss that tonight. No, that was a change late in the agenda. Then we have SD 2011 S05, the Bentley Homes, down on County Line Road. Show of hands. Thank you. And then the zoning hearing board discussion for Cass Holloway III on 40 Luella Court. Is all the applicants here? Cass here? Tom, I know you're here. Okay, good. Let's move forward then with the comprehensive plan by adding incorporating the Garrett Hill Master Plan of July 21st, 2008. So again, we have seen this several times. Do you want to give us a brief update for the audience where we are with this? I know you're new to this whole thing. Maybe we should be doing that. Does somebody want to take the ball? You want to do it? Come on, Rich. We'll let Rich do it. Rick, I'm sorry.
Either one. I'm just going to read the end of, as explanatory, the end of our 2010 annual report, the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee. But this is contained in the conclusion, and I think this will suffice as being explanatory. Conclusion. The GHIC suggests that the most important issue to be addressed in the short term was brought to light during the November zoning workshop by the presenters Mark Fazzoli, Shirley Yannick, and G. Fazick. In order for the Garrett Hill Master Plan to share the same status and essentially be incorporated into the 2003 Comprehensive Land Use Plan, it needs to be institutionalized. The presenters reported that institutionalizing a plan simply means that contained in the resolution which adopts the plan is language specifically incorporating the plan into the Comprehensive Land Use Plan as an addition to be part of the overall plan. It's being handled now as an amendment to the plan. Thus, it has to come to you and to Delco Planning. The Garrett Hill Implementation Committee does not believe that sufficient language to accomplish this was in the resolution that adopted the Garrett Hill Master Plan in July 2008. Sharing the same status with the Comprehensive Plan means fundamentally that future Garrett Hill ordinances would follow the standard of being generally consistent with the Garrett Hill Master Plan. In addition, the Garrett Hill Master Plan would be subject to 10-year periodic updating along with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The committee, the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee, is confident that it was our intention, as well as the community's, the commissioners, and the township's intention and desire for the Garrett Hill Master Plan to be incorporated into the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The committee believed that by its adoption, the Garrett Hill Master Plan would become part of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The GHIC respectfully suggests that in order to rectify this deficiency, our township solicitor, John Rice, draft a resolution with the appropriate language to incorporate the Garrett Hill Master Plan into the 2003 Comprehensive Land Use Plan for the Commissioner's consideration and anticipated adoption. And then, as such amendment, it needs to come before our Planning Commission and, again, the Delaware County Planning Commission. It's going to be in front of the Delaware County Planning Commission on the 18th of this month, and this is before you tonight as an amendment to our Comprehensive Land Use Plan of 2003. Okay?
On how this has changed highlight-wise from the last time we saw it, because we have a few members on the board.
Thank you. Not at all. There hasn't been any change to the Garrett Hill Master Plan. Again, the issue here is simply to I consider it almost housekeeping to rectify. Again, I think everyone understood and believed that this was what was happening at the time. However, when the zoning presenters came, they did mention that this language needs to be specific. So I think that this will probably become the practice as we go along into the future. But right now, again, what's before you is this resolution to make an amendment to incorporate the Garrett Hill Master Plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me start first with questions from the board on the plan that's in front of us.
I have a background question. Was the WBOD done in the same fashion? Because this all happened prior to my joining. Was it incorporated into the comp plan? Oh, Rick probably knows.
Go ahead. Rick knows this better than anybody.
I do not believe so, because the language that adopted the Garrett Hill Master Plan was modeled after the language that adopted the WBOD. So I do believe that the same condition may well exist for the WBOD.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the WBOD isn't it an ordinance, though, and this is a plan?
I meant the plan I think there was a plan that came prior to that was resulted in the ordinance. That was my question about it.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, the Garrett Hill, we passed ordinances, if I remember correctly, for that, and those are actually already in the zoning ordinances. It's just including it in the comprehensive plan. That's what we're talking about this evening.
And do me a favor, you didn't introduce yourself for public.
Okay, I'm sorry. My name's Rick Barker. I live at 920 Lewis Lane, and I'm the chair of the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee and served as the chair of the Garrett Hill Steering Committee. But to answer your question, Doug, this does not concern the ordinances whatsoever, the zoning and the saldo. They are currently incorporated into our code as ordinance. This just deals with the Garrett Hill Master Plan. And it really, again, boils down to two issues. One is that future ordinance, as you may already be aware, needs to be generally consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. So this would make future Garrett Hill ordinances fall within the standard of being generally consistent with the Garrett Hill Master Plan. And then also a periodic update. Again, so that this has some sort of reference, some sort of status. Again, the status of a comprehensive plan is, let's just say, not in other words, it's not really expressed beyond this generally consistent standard. But nevertheless, I think it's important. It makes sense. And there are some inconsistencies between the 2003 Comprehensive Land Use Plan and the Garrett Hill Master Plan, and I can talk about those if you'd like. But the point is that it would clarify that, and it would just prevent any future misunderstanding and perhaps conflict.
But so if it's not incorporated as part of the comprehensive plan, then theoretically we could write ordinances in the future that are consistent with the comprehensive plan but not consistent with the Garrett Hill Master Plan. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly the issue that we're trying to address.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the board? Any public comment? No public comment. Any further discussion from the board?
I guess I just have one point of clarification. And Rick, I completely understand, and I think this is a great idea. I think my only question, and one we might want to just give a touch of a thought to, is that it's got a 5-year lag from the comp plan. So in saying that the Garrett Hill Master Plan needs to be updated every 10 years, but it's 5 years behind our comprehensive plan, does that mean that we're going to bump it up and review the Garrett Hill Master Plan in 2013 when the overall comprehensive plan is done? Or will we let it slide and wait until, I guess it would be 2023, whereupon the Garrett Hill Master Plan would be 15 years old, but get it on the same timeline line as the regular comprehensive plan. And that's just something, I mean, I don't know that we need to decide that, but I think some thought needs to be given to that. If we're going to formalize that, we don't want to create two timelines, two sets of expense for a review of that part of the plan.
I think that it gets folded into the comp plan timeline. I'm pretty sure that that's what happens. And then, even though it'll be a little bit early the first time that it's reviewed, then it'll be on track.
Any other comment, discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that we vote to approve recommending that they put this into the comprehensive plan, the Garrett Hill Master Plan. I'm looking for the exact wording off of our agenda. That we incorporate the Garrett Hill Master Plan into the 2003 Comprehensive Plan of Radnor Township.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're going to go out of order here just for a second. Cass, I see you came into the room. We have a little bit of an issue, and I'm going to apologize, on your application tonight. I know I looked at that as it was going to be a sketch plan presentation tonight. I want to have this discussion for a second, which would mean that there'd be no public comment, that we don't give an approval. We would just give some direction, and then it would move forward. I'm being told that that's incorrect, that they are looking for us to give both a motion on this application along with our opinions and suggestions. So with that being said, I honestly say myself, I'm not prepared to do that tonight. And I also would feel like I believe the neighbors did not have a normal timeline of notice and for the meeting tonight. So I'm a little concerned that we're going to go into, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I know I'm not prepared to do this tonight if it's a motion as opposed to a sketch plan. Does anybody else feel that way?
I absolutely do. I was going to actually ask to table it.
So the question
What was it
is-
advertised as?
I'll turn over to our solicitor.
It's not advertised, I don't
Well,
believe,
then how can we take any action on it?
because you're not required to advertise it.
Well, I think considering it's
And
in the
just
center
a
of Wayne, we
clarification,
should.
you do not need to make a motion on this. It's just comments that are then forwarded to the zoning hearing board for their consideration at the hearing in September. But you don't need a motion to recommend approval, denial, or anything. It's just comments on the plan.
Now, we meet in, this is August, I forgot.
We would meet before
We
the
meet
zoning
before the
hearing
zoning
board.
hearing board.
So they could come
Yeah.
to see us first and then be in zoning hearing board. So I'm saying I think that would be
I agree.
the better way to do
Right.
that, so the residents can give notice. The other issue would be if I'm looking at it as a sketch plan, I would not take public comment. Quite frankly, I like to hear the public comment before it goes to zoning. Again, this is just my opinion, and I'm open to that and having this discussion with everyone.
Well, actually, I
feel
think
bad.
my personal opinion is, and it quite possibly may not be the way you've done things, I think we should hear public comment whether it's a sketch plan or not.
We can certainly take that up as new business. and
Okay.
I'm happy to hear that because I know other townships do it that way. We've heard that before. We've not done it that way. But again, what I don't want to do is have public comment tonight and have a lot of the residents come and say, I didn't know you were going to do that
Okay,
tonight,
that's
so I wasn't
fine.
ready. And we're having discussions about the things that aren't really important, which is the plan and how they feel about the plan. We're getting to, I didn't get the notice, I didn't get the time. It was August, all those good things. So I'm looking to the applicant is to say, if you can table this to September, I'd like to make that suggestion very strongly unless there's a real reason why you can't do that. So I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize for that. But how would you feel about a move to September? You want to take a minute, go right ahead. Yep.
You know, Ed, the other thing I'm sensitive to is, because I've watched a few of the HARB meetings the last few months, I want to be sensitive to everyone's time, the applicants. They've all spent a
Absolutely.
lot of time at these meetings, gone long nights, and then not able to been able to take action, partly because of lack of information. So we could ultimately be saving everybody a lot of time tonight, ourselves included, but the public and the applicant, because that's how it's gone for them, and I'm sure it's frustrating for everyone involved.
Ed, just I have a question. Why do we feel that the public was not properly informed or is not ready to comment?
I think there's two issues there that I've heard. One is that the plan that was originally filed, the zoning hearing board application, is different from the plan that you have in front of you. And the public was not made aware of that until the last couple of days. And I think several members of the public have looked at the old plan thinking it's the one you're going to look at, not realizing there's been revisions. The second issue is that this was actually added to your agenda pretty late in the game, sometime in the middle of last week. And so I think several members of the public had looked at the PC agenda early last week, didn't see this on it, so assumed that you weren't going to review it, and then only heard at the last minute, oh, you are reviewing it. So those are the two big issues that I've been told as far as public notification goes on this.
If we move forward in another month, is it clear now to everyone which plans we'd be looking at? I know there's been, as you said, there's been some confusion about a previous plan versus the proposed plan at this time. Is that clear now to everyone if we move forward?
I think so, and I think there's some administrative issue with the township that the township needs to make sure that the most up-to-date plan is in every file. It's my understanding the township keeps separate files for the zoning hearing board and then for what's in front of you, and that also led to some confusion where people are asking for the zoning hearing board file, which had the old plan, instead of the planning commission file, which had the new plan. So that can be adjusted also.
No,
I
if it's
have a
new
question, if I could. How much time before a meeting should the plans be submitted to the township for review?
This is one of the problems is this is an unusual review. For land development, I believe it's 21 days. For normal land development, be it sketch plan, preliminary plan, final plan. However, this is not your normal land development plan. It's something that's forwarded to you because it's a zoning hearing board application that involves a land development. And there is no rules and procedures, I believe, in place specifically saying, 21 days or however many days beforehand, and maybe that's something the township needs to look into to make sure that the public does have notification. Also, there is no specific written requirement for public notification under these sets of circumstances, unlike with your normal land development plan.
Well, I think if you're asking the zoning hearing board to consider our input, we should have accurate input, and that means these plans need to be reviewed by the township staff. So I think the township
I think
needs to...
these were. That's not
Okay.
the issue.
All right, but I think you need to set up criteria, even if it is a sketch plan, that it's in 21 days before the meeting so that the staff has adequate time to review it. Because what's the point of us reviewing a plan that hasn't really been gone over by a township engineer?
Yeah, actually, this plan was going over by the engineer, and that's because he was able to do that. That's why it was put on tonight's agenda. I think if he was unable to do that, it would not have been put on tonight's agenda. It would have been pushed off to September.
How do we go about correcting the timeline on sketch plans?
On this particular...
Well, no, in general.
Well, there is no problem with sketch plans in general. They're 21 days. This is not a sketch plan. It's reviewed as if it were a sketch plan, but it's not treated as if it's a sketch plan.
Right. The problem is there's a hole here.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
the hole needs to be plugged.
Right,
So
and-
I think no matter what the plan is, it needs to be 21 days in advance. If we're going to be giving any sort of information that is correct to the zoning hearing board, we are not engineers. I don't know if anybody is here, but, okay. But you probably don't have the time to go over these plans the way the township engineer would. So I really feel strongly that we need to put in the criteria for anything that we're reviewing, whether it's a sketch plan, major or minor. It needs to be in 21 days in advance.
Okay, the only one problem with these plans is that since they're attached to a zoning hearing board application, the township must hold a hearing within 60 days unless the applicant grants us a waiver. If the township doesn't do that, the application is deemed granted.
I
so
realize that.
That's one of the issues.
You still need to have informed people giving
Right.
suggestions. And I'm sure if it's 21 days, if the applicant really wants it to be reviewed in a timely manner by the zoning hearing board, then they need to get it to us in time. If they understand what the timeline is, they will be able to make it. So it's a change that I think needs to be done and shouldn't be that difficult. hopefully.
That's not a problem. I mean,
Okay.
I've certainly, it's been made known to the administration, and, I will talk to them, and we'll try to work something out that meets your requirements as well as the legal requirements of the MPC.
Great, all right, thank you.
Skip, you had a comment?
Still wrestling with what we're doing here, if you know what I mean. Like, if it's as if it were a sketch plan, but it's not a sketch plan. And, I'm confused, I guess. I'm looking for guidance from someone as
I mean,
to
like
whether or
who's
not.
on first?
Yeah.
I-
I mean,
The-
to
the-
me, if it's a sketch plan, we're not going to do the public comment. We're going to free range through it, bounce a few ideas, and make them come back. And if it's going from here right to zoning, then that's not a sketch plan. So I don't know, what are we doing here?
And I'll let Peter try to address exactly.
The reason why it's talked about, the zoning provision that creates this requirement says basically, any zoning hearing board application that involves a project or a plan that will eventually go through land development is supposed to be forwarded to the planning commission for your review. And it says here that the planning commission may review the application and related documents as a sketch plan. That's where it comes from. However, it's not a sketch plan. It's not filed as one. They're not filing for land development. There is no real discussion of why you're doing this. It's my belief, the reason why the zoning ordinance has this is if the zoning hearing board grants the application, they're going to grant it based on the plan presented to them. And they're going to say, you must, if you're going to take advantage of the special exception, the variance, whatever, you must build, your project general accordance with the plan that we saw. However, if after that it goes through land development and it doesn't comply with certain saldo provisions, doesn't comply with certain zoning provisions, they're going to have to change the plan. Well, if they change the plan during this land development process, they'll then have to go back to zoning to get it re-reviewed under the new plan. So I think what you need to do here, why this is being done, is for the planning commission to point out, hey, you got some major problems here. You better fix them now before you go to the zoning hearing board, so you don't end up going back there a second time. So you don't need to catch every single little minor engineering detail, but where there's major problems with the plan that you see, okay, in order to conform with our ordinances under land development, you're going to have to make changes to the plan. We want them made now, as opposed to after the zoning hearing board reviews it and grants the relief requested.
Question then, in the provisions, are we supposed to have public comments now or not?
It's the Radnor, the planning commission's normal MO of not accepting public comments on sketch plans. There's no legal basis for that, one way or the other. That's just a way Radnor Township has operated, but there's no requirement that you must accept public comment. There's no requirement that you cannot, you can deny public comment. It's just the way you've done it. To be honest, I've never seen any other township do it anywhere else. I've never heard of it.
Do what?
Not accept public comment on a sketch plan or anything else in front of you or in front of a planning commission.
I have a quick question. When you talked about trying to avoid the duplication of going back to zoning after planning has seen it, why is it that we have two different plans? Why are we not reviewing the plan that is at the zoning? I don't understand why we even have a new plan. Why are we not reviewing the zoning hearing board's plan? That's my confusion about this.
I don't know specifically what happened. I only can presume that the applicant revised the plan from when he first submitted it to the zoning hearing board. They have, I believe, gone to other township meetings. They've made revisions, so they're giving you the latest plan. The plan that's important for the zoning hearing board is not the one attached to the application. It's the one that's actually filed as evidence at the hearing. And so it's very common, to be honest, for an applicant to submit one plan with the zoning hearing board application, but 45 days later, when the hearing actually occurs, they'll say, hey, we've done a revised plan. This is a plan we're submitting as evidence. This is the one you need to follow, not the one attached to the application.
But if we review this tonight, it's not the one that the zoning hearing board is reviewing. then aren't we at the same risk of having to duplicate this work? Whatever comments we give tonight, they're comments on a plan that zoning hasn't seen yet. So isn't zoning going to have to go back and see this plan again anyway, or are we going to have to go back and see zoning?
Ideally, the zoning hearing board is going to review this plan. Or what might happen if you've made comments that says, your plan violates, sections A, B, and C of the saldo, you need to change it. Ideally, actually, you want the zoning hearing board to review that changed plan, the plan that's been altered in response to your comments. But yeah, you certainly don't want zoning to be reviewing the old plan, the one that was originally submitted to it.
Any other questions? Then I'll turn to the applicant. I've requested a deferral for a month. Can you respond to that request?
Sure. Dave Falcone, with Saul Ewing on behalf of Kaz Holloway. So we're certainly happy to do whatever the Planning Commission would like. We were prepared to present a sketch plan and really just get feedback on it for the exact reasons we've just heard. We actually have received the letter from the engineer and have prepared even a new plan which shows compliance with, I think, all but 2 points on the plan to show to this commission, hey, look, here's the comments we got from your engineer. We'd love to have your feedback. We have no problem coming back again in September, and we have absolutely no problem hearing comment from the neighbors. At this point, we thought sketch plan review, based on what the township staff had said to us when we submitted our application, is important to us. I mean, the more times we can get feedback from you guys, from the neighbors at this point in the process, we think it's so helpful, because we're going to continue to tweak and to modify to get this thing, to get it right, get it in compliance with the ordinance, and move forward with it as little help and relief as we really need.
I have a quick question for
Yes,
you.
sir.
Are you saying you have a third version that you brought tonight that we haven't seen yet?
Well, it's
No,
actually,
I'm asking. I'm just
yeah,
asking.
because we got comments from the township engineer.
So we did not get those in our packet.
Nope, we have them. We have the old plan as well. Again, this is
Yeah.
normal. This is what we would get. We
Well-
brought a plan that shows our ability to comply with the township engineer's comments.
Well, I invest time, and other members of the board invest time in looking at what we receive, and if there's a new thing that's materially different, I am leaning in favor personally of pushing it to September.
The same thing could happen again, though. So even if we have to come back in September, we're going to submit these revised plans back to Mr. Lay for a letter.
If you're going to do that in September, I'd like to have the set that we comment on at least a week to 10 days in advance of the time that I comment.
But
So
that's,
but
but
we
that's
still
what's
ha-
unusual here. We've had sketch plans that we have not seen until it's presented. So if we wanted, I'm just not putting words in your mouth, but the applicant's coming to us as a sketch plan, we would normally have not seen it before. And if they do want to present it tonight, we would normally not ask for public comment, but we've made that exception also. So I guess, as confusing as this sounds, it would want to treat it, and Peter, I'm looking at you to start waving if I'm saying something wrong, but if you want to treat it just as a sketch plan tonight that we've not seen, and we walk through it like we normally would, and we just give comment tonight with the understanding it's absolutely coming back again in September for what I'll call our final comments on whatever plan that is that we see 21 days in advance, and we allow, if there is public comment, we'll allow that today as an exception. I guess I'm okay with that if everyone else is. So if that's what the applicant would like to do, unless anyone strongly objects, I would say we treat it like a sketch plan like we've never seen before. We'll look at version 3 tonight. We'll allow public comment if there is any. We will apologize to the public knowing this was a little confusing. They're going to get another chance in September before this goes to zoning in September. I want to treat it that way. Peter, am I going to lose my job over that?
No, not at all. That's fine.
Does this interfere with this, does this limit the 60 days?
No,
No.
it does not.
Okay.
It doesn't leave a small amount of that 60 days at the end?
No, I mean, there's no matter what you do tonight, they're scheduled to go to the zoning hearing board in September. I believe the zoning hearing board does not meet in August at all.
That's correct.
So they're going to September no matter what. And so you have two bites at the apple here, tonight and September. However you wish to arrange them, it works for me.
My only concern about that, and I appreciate that it sounds like you're very responsive. You heard you read the engineer's comments and immediately took action and drew a new plan. The only problem is that every time that happens, it's not really giving the public or us, but we do get sketch plans that we haven't seen before, but we see them every month. We're kind of used to how to look at a sketch plan and what to be looking for. That's not the public doesn't have that advantage. So every time a new plan is thrown up on the board, they're not really getting a chance to fully digest it and perhaps even have an opportunity to look at the saldo, look at zoning, and see what concerns they may or may not have. Sure. And it sounds like tonight, they didn't even know this meeting existed. Now we've got a plan. They haven't had an opportunity to see that plan because it's a revised plan from what was in zoning. And now we're going to maybe not even look at that plan tonight, but look at yet another plan tonight. I can't speak for them. I would feel a little bit like a spinning top for the public who's trying to digest this, and quite frankly, they're going to be way more impacted by this on a daily basis than I am.
Susan, I guess if this is a sketch plan, the public doesn't comment typically anyway, then I don't think we're putting them out any. And if and they're going to get two chances to comment.
Two.
Tonight and
we are
in
going to let them
September.
comment.
Well, that's what the suggestion is. If they like, they can comment
My
tonight.
recommendation is treat this as just a sketch plan for tonight, understanding that no one's seen Plan 3, and make the exception that there is public comment. They can come forward also. We've done that once in the past. I would suggest we do it again tonight. So we're kind of throwing out all the rules, but it absolutely comes back to us again in September. We get one more bite where there will be public comment, officially with proper notice, and then it will go to zoning in September also. So that's the suggestion I'm putting on the table.
I guess my question for Mr. Fiorello then is the plan to take all of tonight's comments. Did I say it incorrectly?
Falcone.
Falcone, I apologize. Mr. Falcone's comments tonight, and then are they going to generate yet another sketch plan for us in September?
They may. That's their
Okay.
choice.
All right.
That's why they're coming here.
Okay.
But we when we submitted our plans, we spoke with Township staff, we saw this as a unique opportunity because there was no meeting in August. So we had a big gap between when we submitted and when we would actually be in front of the zoning board. So we said, well, this is a great opportunity. Get some sketch plan review and do what you can. You can come back in September with a more formalized plan, get formal feedback from the Planning Commission, and then show up at the Zoning Hearing Board in September. We just had such a huge gap that we thought any tweaks we could make, any feedback we could get, and we got a letter from the engineer, it was great. We thought this is exactly what is, we use the time positively rather than wait.
I have one more question about the scope of our review tonight. Are we only reviewing the garage at this point?
We're going to review the sketch plan, which in my mind is whatever the applicant wants to present to
Okay.
us.
But so far, what I've seen up to this point seems to be only the garage, and perhaps the public is here in part because they are not keen on the whole project in some
Well,
way.
again, that will come up in September, and I'm sure they'll make that comment. But we're going to react, I would suggest we react to whatever is presented to us tonight.
Okay.
And I think the engineer's letter was all-inclusive, went through the whole saldo and commented on each section, I believe, so.
Any objections from the board doing it that way? I don't see any, so I'm going to move forward that direction. I'm going to
I'm not
ask.
thrilled, but I can see that I'm not going to, I think we should table it, but I can see that it's not going to go that way, so although
Thank you.
they still are bumped down to number 5 or
Yeah,
something.
we're
on the
going to ask
agenda,
them to
right,
sit
okay.
back down and
Sure.
bring the next applicant up.
Thanks.
And I apologize for the delay on everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, so that brings us now to item number 4, SD 2011 S05, sketch plan of Bentley Homes to subdivide 4.634 acre parcel, a 12 residential lot plan and 10 residential lot plan are being submitted for the property at 1430 Kennel Line Road. Applicant is here. Yes, thank you. And we will start with Dave and Peter to give us an update on your comments. And if you wouldn't mind just kind of starting for the audience with kind of a history where we are with this applicant.
Do you want me to go first or them to go first?
Yeah, well, you can go first if you want.
Okay.
That'd be great, Tom. Go right ahead.
I'm confused from what we already talked about.
That's all right. It's August. We're changing up
I think
a little
we
bit.
were the ones that had the sketch plan that you allowed comments on, too.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So we're all here together. My name's Tom Bentley. I represent Bentley Homes for the application on the Gibbs property. The last time we were here, I believe was May 2nd, and at that time we presented, I think maybe the third of a set of plans that we had been presenting to you. And at that time, the Planning Commission asked us to do three things. The first was to lose a couple of lots. The second was to be more creative with our driveways and our access and, the trash trucks and things like that. And the third was to meet with and try to appease the neighbors. We have spent the last 3 months working on those three things. We believe that we have accomplished that. What I'm going to do, there's two plans that we submitted. I'm going to talk about the 10-lot plan because I think that's the direction that we're heading in. And if anybody doesn't see the difference with the 10-lot and the 12-lot, I can unfold it here. I guess. God. Okay. Well, the three things, lose a couple lots, be more creative, appease the neighbors. Obviously, what you see before you here is 10 lots, not 12 or 14. We've presented, you guys are probably confused by the number of plans we've presented to you. I'm a little confused myself. But we have a 10-lot plan. This plan has more of a neighborhood feeling. It's got a cul-de-sac in the middle of the property, and we think that we have satisfied the neighbors as much as we could. And I will go into details on those three items. The neighbors, we really had a pretty good process with the neighbors. We met in May, June, and July. And I want to openly thank the neighbors for being organized and coming to the meetings and being open to my ideas. And we had some good discussions. And I think the process was really, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was a good process. What came out of those meetings, as I mentioned, we met 3 times, and each meeting was probably for at least an hour and a half or 2 hours. We obviously replaced the cul-de-sac. The big difference with this plan is we have a cul-de-sac that we're calling a private road in the middle of the property. The cul-de-sac replaced the long common drives or the variations we did on the common drives that some of the members made comments that they didn't like, and because of the trash removal and safety and welfare and off-street parking and things like that. We have 10 lots instead of 5. Instead of the 12. We have 5 along the front. That's something that was important to the neighbors to try and limit the number of houses that were on County Line Road. In terms of secondary driveways, the original plan had 2 very long common drives that each served 3 homes. And what you see before you is we still have 2 common drives at the end of the cul-de-sac, but they're much shorter. They only serve 2 houses. Your ordinance allows 3, and I think we have a plan that works much better. In terms of what you would see from this job as this community as you go by, the homes are wider. The original homes were 38 feet. One of the big concerns about the neighbors was are these homes going to look like our homes? I drew up some elevations. I showed them some sketches of what the houses would look like. And when we went to the 10 lots, we were able to make the houses wider. We now have a 50-foot wide house, which is very consistent with the neighborhood. One of the things that I learned during our meetings is that the neighbors across the street, who were, you asked us to address the people from Lower Mering as well, a lot of them came to the meetings. Their houses are actually wider than the houses that are in Radnor. Even though they were in R4 for Radnor, they're in a different type of zoning, and their houses are wider. And so we tried to kind of meet a middle ground, and by doing the 10 lots, we were able to do that. The lots are wider. The lots are all 80 feet or larger. The old plan had 50-foot lots. We also told the neighbors that if we were successful with this 10-lot plan with the private road, that we would vary the architecture on the front of the houses, not only in terms of the style of the houses, but also in terms of how the driveways came in either from the front or the sides. We try to mix it up so it would look better. The cul-de-sac has enabled us to take 5 driveways off of County Line Road, which they were happy about. And in general, we've upgraded our product line. We're basically building a more expensive home. It's wider. It's probably going to be a slightly larger home, and I think it's more in keeping with the houses in Radnor, and especially some of the Lower Merion houses are pretty good size. So we've upped our product size to be more consistent with the neighborhood. In terms of just feelings about the plan, I think this plan presents much more of a neighborhood feeling. By having the cul-de-sac, we're going to enable not only the neighbors around us, but the people that will be living here to have more of a neighborhood of their own. So instead of all the driveways that you see on the 12-lot plan, we have a cul-de-sac. I think we'll have a nice neighborhood feel. There'll be places to walk, be places for the neighbors to interact with each other. There'll be some off-street parking. The trash trucks can come down. I think the cul-de-sac, even though it's more expensive for us and we're losing a couple lots, I think it was a good comment from the Planning Commission to do that. In addition, we've created a 25-foot buffer. If you look at Lot 1, the Devlin residence is immediately next to Lot 1. They were our closest neighbor, and they were really impacted the most. So we agreed to move the house over, make the lot bigger, create a buffer there. It could have been 12-foot, and we have a 25-foot gap between the house and their property line. We're going to put a berm in there. We're going to add some landscaping on the berm so that they have a lovely old home, and we want to try and they had a lot of concerns about our development. So we've added that 25-foot buffer. I believe there's no question that this is a better plan. It's more reasonable. It fits in with the neighborhood. I believe I did my best to satisfy the local residents. There might be a couple of people who I didn't get to, but we had 3 meetings. We had a lot of people come, and we had a lot of discussion. And it's my intention to keep on satisfying the neighbors. If there's anything that comes up, I know that we're in an infill situation here. We want to be good neighbors. And one of the things that the neighbors seem to respond to is the fact that having our company in there doing the houses and having a long-standing, building experience in the main line. We've been in business for almost 40 years. They felt that we were going to do what we said we were going to do. So that really helped the discussions. Oh, the 12-lot plan, the lovely 12-lot plan. We submitted this plan contextually so that we would have something that we could work off of. We looked at your ordinances very carefully, and I asked my engineers to design a plan that was a by right plan that had 12 lots. And if you look at your engineer's comments, there's a couple minor comments about the open space.
If you put that plan up on the table for everyone to see, thank you.
Not my most creative work, but this is a by right plan. This meets all your ordinances. If you look at the engineer's comments, the only thing that was of any substantial nature on the comments was the fact that the open space was not accessible to all the houses. We could easily remedy that by just extending the open space along this property line, and it's an eraser and a colored marker. So we have this plan. We're submitting this plan. We don't really want to build this plan. We think there's more value in the other plan. We think it's better for the neighborhood. We think it's better for Radnor Township. So we're asking for the support of the Planning Commission, as we've already asked for the support of the neighbors. We have a couple waivers that are mentioned in your engineer's report. The I think they're pretty minor. Most of them involve the cul-de-sac. And I can go into it in great detail, or in general, I mean, the cul-de-sac's not long enough, it's not wide enough, and the right-of-ways aren't big enough. But it's a safe cul-de-sac. You can drive in it, you can turn around, you can back a trash truck down it, and enables me to have 10 lots, which is really the minimum that I can go to on this property. You asked me to be creative. This is what I've come up with. There's a couple other small items besides the dimensions on the cul-de-sac. I believe that there's a comment in your ordinance. It's a recommendation about the lot width to depth, the famous 2.5 to 1 recommendation. It's not a requirement. I believe it's a recommendation. We believe that a couple of lots in the back, maybe lot 10 and 9, do not and will not meet the 2.5 to 1. So we would ask for your forgiveness on that and not be held to that recommendation. In addition, the neighbors and your engineer have asked that lots 2 and 3 come off of the cul-de-sac and have their driveways come off the cul-de-sac. So instead of being off County Line Road here and here, they would come off the cul-de-sac in right where my finger is, right there. Right? Right. Okay. I can't do both at once. Okay, I'll try and do this. So instead of the driveways coming off County Line Road 2 and 3, right there, they would come off the cul-de-sac right about where I'm pointing. We would love to do that. However, there's also an ordinance somewhere in your saldo that says that you're only allowed to have a maximum of 5 driveways. You're only supposed to have a maximum of 5 driveways off a private drive. We think it's much better to have the driveways come off, so we would ask for your forgiveness there to have 7 driveways instead of 5. Some of the other comments from the neighbors, the neighbors are here tonight. I welcome them to come up and make their own comments. They don't want any sidewalks. They don't want them on Lancaster. They don't want them on County Line Road. Everybody's very concerned about Villanova students and the trash they leave behind and the comings and goings and et cetera, et cetera. And as I already mentioned, the neighbors had a private meeting while we were there, and they said the 10 lots are acceptable. One of the things that I said that I would do for them is to leave the trees up as long as possible, even when we're tearing down the old house and the barn, and also to add the new trees that we would have as soon as possible, which we said we'd be willing to do during construction. They also asked for me to paint the lots and the locations of the lots. I hope they got a chance to look at it. We went out there and marked where the 80 and 87 foot lots are and where the center line is. It's a little confusing. There's a lot of other marks on the roads, but we did what we requested. And that's about it. We hope you like our plan. We'd like to have your support. I think it's a good plan. I think it's a reasonable plan, and I think it is it has minor waivers required. Okay.
Thank you. Dave, we'll go ahead and give you the mic, and you give the highlights of your comments.
Sure. As you look through my July 27th letter, being as I was reviewing 2 separate plans, I put a prefix ahead of each of my comments indicating which plan I was reviewing. The comments which have a 10 before them refer to the 10-lot plan. The comments that have a 12 in front of them refer to the 12-lot plan, and comments which have a B in front of them, those comments apply to both plans. So I'll just touch on some of the key points, because I actually have 4 pages of comments, and most of them are easy enough to address. So I'll just touch on the high points. First, under zoning ordinance review, comment number 4. There's a section which requires steep slopes to be defined on the plans, and in this case, we're dealing with some possibly man-made steep slopes, and they are indicated. Just going to come. The area is shaded here in a purplish color. They're listed as unregulated steep slopes, which means that they are potentially man-made steep slopes, and that's what the applicant is contending. We would need to do some verification, make sure those are not naturally occurring steep slopes, and if they are, then that would require a variance, which would make the 12-lot subdivision plan a non-by-right plan, as indicated, because you cannot, if you have a variance, obviously, it wouldn't be a by-right plan. By-right plan, by definition, means it does not require any waivers or variances, so that would have to be researched and addressed. Under subdivision land development ordinance review, comment number 3, this deals with the landlocked open space, which Mr. Bentley touched on. As he indicated, he could potentially extend the open space back through here, but I would still submit it would still be a landlocked parcel if, in fact, the open space is, if there's no access to the open space from a public road. So, again, I think that still would be something that would require relief. So, under the 12-lot subdivision plan, it still would not be by right. Moving on to comment number 5, this is on the 10-lot plan. Again, as Mr. Bentley indicated, he would need a waiver as from the length of a cul-de-sac, as a cul-de-sac minimum length is 250 feet. We wouldn't oppose that waiver. The cul-de-sac as designed is, from a length standpoint, is fine from an engineering standpoint. Comment number 6 is a waiver from, or a waiver would be required from the right-of-way width. The ordinance requires a 60-foot wide minimum right-of-way. The proposed right-of-way is only 40 feet. And additionally, the paved radius of a cul-de-sac is required to be 40 feet. Their proposed radius is only 32. So the bulb here is proposed at 32 feet. It would need to be 40 to be in compliance with the subdivision land development ordinance.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Could we ask questions now? Yeah. What impact does that have? Functionally, what impact do both the 40 and 60 versus 32 and 40 have?
Well, mainly for circulation. I mean, getting for larger vehicles, allowing them to turn around safely. Also, potentially parking. I mean, it's a vehicle for additional parking. So those are the two main advantages you get with a larger cul-de-sac. Obviously, it's more impervious surface, but that's really the main issues that drive that requirement.
And how about the right-of-way of 40 to 60?
Similarly, that moves into the sidewalk issue. I mean, I think if sidewalks aren't going to be required or needed, I don't think you need the additional right-of-way. However, if we were going to impose sidewalks on this cul-de-sac, then you'd want the additional right-of-way. So, okay.
But it doesn't have any effect on vehicles in terms of the narrow right-of-way doesn't have any impact on the automobiles or trucks.
No, it would strictly be the cartway that would have control over that.
What are the 32 versus 40? It was 40 to diameter in the circle. What kinds of vehicles would not be able to get around that easily? I mean, like SUVs and stuff like that? Would they have a hard time?
No, SUVs would have no trouble getting around a 32-foot cartway. Cul-de-sac
fire trucks?
Fire trucks, moving trucks. I mean, a small box truck like a UPS truck would have no problem navigating a 32-foot cul-de-sac. But
It's a radius. I think you might be confused. It's a radius. It's a 64-foot hole.
Okay.
right, correct. Okay. Moving on to comment number 7. This again applies to the 10-lot subdivision. I'm sorry, I guess that's where we just went over the 40-foot right-of-way. Number 11, this has to do with private driveways need to be 40 feet from an intersection. Again, as Mr. Bentley indicated, we were pushing to have these driveways access the cul-de-sac for lots 2 and 3 rather than County Line Road. We would support that as a better option. Mr. Bentley indicated possibly he'd need another waiver because we'd have 7 homes, I guess, accessing the cul-de-sac. I didn't interpret the ordinance that way, but if in fact there is relief required there, I would again recommend that waiver be granted, because I think it's better to remove those driveways from County Line Road if possible. Number 12, this applies to both plans. No private driveways are to take access from an arterial or major collector street. Lancaster Avenue is what's considered an arterial street, and County Line Road is considered a collector street. So access to either street actually requires a waiver. So driveway accessing either road requires a waiver. So in that respect, again, for the 12-lot subdivision plan, you would, a waiver would be required.
Would that be granted by us or by PennDOT?
It would be governed by PennDOT, but the access, we would have say over the access as well. They would need to get an HOP permit from PennDOT for the access, but our ordinance requires them to get a waiver. So on the 12-lot plan, lots 7 and 8, they are proposed to connect to come out to Lancaster Avenue, and that would require a waiver. So again, for that reason, this technically wouldn't be a by right plan. And comment 13, there is a requirement for sidewalk to be provided along Lancaster Avenue and County Line Road. I defer to the Planning Commission as to whether they think that would be appropriate or not, but again, it is a requirement that would require a waiver. And with that, those are the key comments that I had, but I'll answer any questions on any of the other comments if there are any.
If I understood you correctly, and your comments in writing, even the driveways on County Line would require an HOP or a PennDOT, because it says no driveways shall enter onto a major collector, and County Line's a major collector.
Right, just because it's a major collector doesn't mean it's a state road. So they would need a waiver from the Planning Commission, or they would need a waiver from the township, but not.
So that means neither plan is by right because both plans need waivers?
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question about your comment number 11. Private driveways should not be located less than 40 feet from the intersection and should provide access to the street of lower classification. What's the significance of the driveways for lots 2 and 3? Don't all the lots on the 10-lot plan, wouldn't 5 and 4 also be less than 40 feet from the intersection?
Right.
I don't understand the significance of putting 2 and 3 on the cul-de-sac.
Well, because 2 and 3 have the opportunity to connect to a lower classification road. 2 and 3 have the ability to connect to the cul-de-sac. Trying to connect lots 4 or 5 or 1 to that cul-de-sac would be a little more difficult.
No, absolutely, but
Yeah.
that I understood, but I just wanted to follow through that the comment, even assuming that lots 2 and 3 would have direct, would access the cul-de-sac, the other 1, 4, and 5, are they all still less than 40 feet from the intersection? And I presume you mean the intersection of County Line and, what is that at the bottom of the hill? Airedale. Thank you. Is that what the comment means with regard to the 40 feet?
Well, now it has to do with if you have a driveway which is within 40 feet of an intersection, and the intersection we'd be referring to here is the intersection of the proposed cul-de-sac with County Line Road. So you wouldn't want to put a driveway in any closer than 40 feet from that intersection, from the new intersection that's being created by the cul-de-sac bulb.
But 1, 4, and 5 will still be 40 feet, less than 40 feet from that or not? No, they'd be
No,
more
they
than
won't
that
be.
now.
They'll be further away.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
So Dave, you mentioned that, like, after looking at the 12-lot plan and reading your comments, I can see that that's not technically a by right plan. We keep hearing that it is, but it's really not.
Correct.
Is that correct? Although some of them could be considered minor, some of these problems.
Correct.
Do you have a sense of how many lots could be put on this property from the work that you've done so far? I'm not going to hold you to this. Just a sense of how many lots you could get on in a by right plan?
Well, I can't say for certain that you can't get 12. You might be able to still get 12 there. It's just the plan as submitted would need relief. You know, the 12-lot plan is submitted. Obviously, you'd have to find a way to, well, I mean, you'd need a waiver either way, because again, as I indicated.
I mean, any plan is going to need a waiver because you're going to have access to one of these roads.
Exactly, right. So
But given
technically-
that,
Right,
apart from that,
right.
a 12-lot plan would work.
It's conceivable, yes.
I'm just concerned that, obviously some of these waivers are smaller than others, and you don't
Right.
want to go overboard. But, when a township grants waivers, you're giving something. And if there's no reason for us to do that, it just gives the applicant more lots on the property. That's not a direction that we want to go in. If this 10-lot plan requires more waivers, but it's a much better plan, that gives us a reason to go in that direction.
Right.
But if we haven't seen anything that shows us what really is allowable here, then I'm not sure how to weigh those decisions.
Right. Right. I mean, I guess if you choose, you could ask the applicant to, submit a plan that is truly by right or as much as possible. I mean, we've just.
Which would be hard because you have
We
to
just
have
submitted the
access
fact
somewhere.
that, yeah, so that would be a sole
That's not really
waiver. But
reasonable.
aside from that, potentially you could put a plan together that requires no other waivers beyond that.
I think a bigger issue on the 12 lot is the 10-foot leg from the lots that are on Lancaster Avenue to County Line Road, because I believe you're supposed to have 20-foot access and landlocked. Now, technically, maybe they're not landlocked, but I doubt very much that PennDOT would give 6 highway occupancy permits onto Lancaster Avenue there. So, in effect, they're landlocked. I think the 10 is much better than the 12, but I think it's really kind of ludicrous to call the 12 lot a by right plan. And it's also not a good plan. So,
If we just turn our attention to the 10-lot plan, which,
Yeah.
from a design point of view, seems much better, and from a functional point of view, it seems much better. My concern would be that this is still a lot of building on this property with a lot of steep slopes. And my concern here is not, are there 10 lots or are there 9 lots? My concern is, where is this water going to go? I'm not looking at that plan, but I know that we've talked about the drainage down into this corner pond and, problems in the past. And when I see this many buildings so close together along these roads, especially on these steep slopes, I
Yeah,
just want to bring that's my concern here.
Let me
I think
interrupt.
my concern is
let me
where the
interrupt for
cars
just
gonna
one
go.
second. Any more direct questions for Dave?
Oh, sorry.
I have one.
Let's do that first. And then before we ask that question, show of hands, is there any desire for public comment here tonight on the sketch plan? Okay, fine. So we are, unless there's any opposition here with the board, I'm going to allow public comment on the sketch plan, because we did this once before, and since we seem to be in the mood tonight to have public comment on sketch plan, I'm going to do it twice. Any objection? All right, let's go. Questions for Dave, public comment, then our discussion.
So-
Okay? So direct questions for Dave.
Yeah, got him. So, Dave, Lot 5, is there something I'm misreading about that driveway looking like it's actually going into the end of the property?
On the 10-lot plan, I assume you're
On
speaking?
the 10 lot, I'm sorry, that's the only one I'm going to focus on.
Okay. You mean, you're referring to the fact the driveway looks like it's going across the property line? Or?
Correct.
Well, it's in the right-of-way, though, so it probably should be slid over, but there is room to do that, so, I mean, they easily can adjust the driveway so that it stays on the property.
Okay, and the other question I have is this distinction of clarifying between man-made and natural slopes. There is no distinction between man-made and natural slopes unless there was a grading permit. Do we know of grading permits for anything on this property? With
Not
regard to building in the steep slopes, it doesn't matter if they were man-made or natural. So I'm just curious if we're aware of any permits. Only if they were man-made and they were done with a grading permit can you build in them. So I'm just wondering if we're aware of any grading permits for this property.
I am not aware of
Okay,
anything.
so then it's really irrelevant as to whether they were man-made or natural slopes.
Well, unless there actually are grading permits that exist.
Great, okay.
Right.
All right, so but no one's aware of them as of yet.
Not at this point.
Okay,
no.
thank you.
Dave, Your comment again, back on the bulb, 32 radius versus 40, is that a waiver that you would recommend or not?
Yes, I would. I mean, for this size of development with only, if they make the modification where lots 2 and 3 both will come off the cul-de-sac, then we'd have only 7 lots coming off a short cul-de-sac. So I don't really see much of an issue there because, again, I mean, I think if it's a cul-de-sac bulb that feeds maybe 10 or 15 homes, maybe you need the additional overflow parking. But for something of this size, I don't see an issue.
Other questions for Dave? Dave, before you leave, there was 2 smaller plans. Is there any way you can get both of them on the table so we can see them both on the screen at the same time for both the public? Can you try that for me, please? They may be too small, but while we're going back and forth. Skip, comment down there while he's trying to set that up for me. Yeah, that'll work. That's good. Keep shooting to the center. Do you have a comment?
I'd like to hear some of the public comment, I think, at this point.
All right, then I'll take public comment.
Could I address a couple of the small items that you mentioned?
You're more than welcome to. Come right ahead.
And we could do this like this.
Better? Yeah. You can probably pull it even further. Thank you.
A lot of comment on the steep slopes. We used a plan from another engineering company that originally did this for the Gibbs. 15 years ago. We do not think now that we've looked at it and we've had our own engineers out there, we don't think the steep slopes are accurate, whether they're man-made or not. There are some that are man-made that are obviously man-made and they are steep slopes, but most of the ones that are interspersed in the middle of the property, we do not feel that they are steep slopes. We've looked at them. We just haven't changed the plans. We wanted to know what we're going to do, and really right now we're just really looking for direction as to where we should go. As far as the sidewalks go, I don't think there was ever a requirement that the sidewalks would come down the side of the cul-de-sac. I think it was only requirement was along County Line Road, and so as far as the right-of-way and the cul-de-sac goes, we had some discussions about actually making the cul-de-sac bigger and filling it out right to the right-of-way. We could, if somebody was concerned about the width of it. 64 feet is a big cul-de-sac. That's a lot of room to turn around. So I thought this was fine. We could make it bigger. It's not really a problem. And as far as how many lots we get on here, I think we get 14 lots on here. Okay. They would be smaller houses, and maybe that's what we should have done in the first place. We had that discussion in the first meeting that I probably should have come in with my mean, nasty by right plan. I would build this plan, this 12-lot plan. I'm not in love with it, but I would build it. But I wanted to have a pretty good size footprint. We could make the lots smaller. The lots could go down probably another 20 feet, and we could get 4 or 5 more lots on there. Let's not play that game. Please, let's just, this is you asked me to lose some lots. The neighbors were happy with 10. I lost 2 lots. We've invested a lot of time and money in this already, and I think I did exactly what you asked me to do, was to lose a couple of lots and make the neighbors happy. So if you want, we can come in with another plan. I think it's wasting everybody's time, but that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public comment? I know I had at least one hand out there. Any public comment? Please come forward to the microphone. You have to come up to the microphone, please. Come on up. Give us your name and your address, please.
John DeMarco. I'm 1429 County Line Road. I'm directly across about from the existing driveway. I think Mr. Bentley has come up with a really excellent alternative to the concerns of the neighbors, at least those that I've been aware of and discussing. So if we can focus on the 10-lot plan, I think he would be happy and the neighbors would be happy, and I'm sure the township would be happy if the neighbors are happy.
Sir, are you on the Lower Merion side or the Radnor side?
Lower Merion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? Come forward, please.
Hi, I'm Tom Going. I live at 1425 County Line Road, which is right here. I want to echo what John said, but I'd also like to say that Tom Bentley, I thought, did a good job with us and the neighbors. I was at 3 of the meetings with Tom. He listened to what we had to say. He came in with, as you know, the first time, a plan for more houses. He listened to what we had to say, our concerns about what we looked at from across the street, our concerns about the number of cars that would be entering County Line Road, which is a big concern because we don't want a lot of cars backing out and so forth. It can be a busy road. So I think Tom listened to that. He put 5 houses on County Line instead of, I guess it was 6 the first time. I think he was creative with it. I mean, we'd still like to make sure that we keep the pressure on Tom. You know, we want to make sure that we have the trees that he says that he's going to plant. He talked about building a berm along Lancaster Avenue, because once the big house is gone, it's going to create a lot of noise, especially at my house, because it's blocked. But Tom said, you know, he's interested in putting a berm up. He's interested in leaving trees and things like that. We want to hold him to that. But if he does what he says, what he said he was going to do, I think, and I don't speak for all the neighbors, but I think generally speaking, the neighbors were pretty happy with the 10-lot plan that he came up with. As mentioned, with respect to sidewalks, I know, I guess it was Miss Bogosian mentioned at one of the last meetings, she might be interested in a sidewalk along Lancaster Avenue. I know it, when the neighbors spoke about it and talked about it, no one was interested in a sidewalk. And I don't think it's because we're being selfish. I just think it would be a sidewalk to nowhere. I'm not sure that it would really help anyone. There is a sidewalk on the south side of Lancaster Avenue. I think a lot of people use that. It would make it very difficult. At the bottom of at Lancaster Avenue at Airedale, there are no sidewalks. There also aren't any sidewalks from the end of this property up to Lowry's. So it really would be kind of a sidewalk to nowhere, and I think that that land would be best used to have a great buffer there, so that you know, the impact of this development and removing trees and things like that, it would mitigate some of the noise and what we would have to look at. And as far as a sidewalk on County Line Road, there is a sidewalk on my side of the street. If you put one on the other side of the street, again, you'd have a sidewalk to nowhere, because at the end of the property here, where the Devlins live, there is no sidewalk. So you'd have about a half a block with no sidewalk. And to the eastern part, there'd be no sidewalk as well. So that too would be a sidewalk to nowhere. And I guess it was Tom that said it. We get a lot of trash already. I'm happy to keep it on our side of the street, I guess, from the Villanova kids hitting McDonald's at 2 a.m. and by the time they get to my house, their cheeseburger's done and their wrappers on my lawn. I can live with that. I don't see any reason to spread it out to the other side of the street. So I guess in summary, I think the neighbors, and again, I'm not speaking for everyone. Anybody here who wants to get up can certainly get up and say something. But I think we all work together collaboratively. You know, we exchanged emails, we talked as neighbors and things like that. I think we're comfortable with this. Hey, look, would I like nothing there forever? I've lived in that house for 17 years. I knew the woman who lived there. She came to my 40th birthday party. You know, she was a tremendous neighbor to have, a really elegant older woman who had a lot of history on the main line. But she's gone. I realize that. Something's going to change. And this, to us, I guess, is as good as we can hope for, better than a Villanova dorm or something like that certainly we all feared at one point. So, again, for me, and I think for John DeMarco and certain of the other neighbors, I think we endorse the 10 plan. Let's keep the pressure on Tom to live up to what he said he did. And I hope you all will agree with us, or with me anyway, that this is a pretty good plan, and let's hold him to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come right forward, please.
My name is Anne Marie DeCane. We live at 101 North Lowry's Lane. I have not been to all of the meetings, so I apologize if perhaps I don't have all of the information. But Mr. Bentley said that he has reviewed or provided us with sketch plans of what the facade of the houses are proposed to be or proposed to look like, but I don't think I've ever seen any conceptual plan of what the facades would look like. Okay. Do you have them with you today?
I do.
Okay. Could we all take a look at them?
I've shown them before at this meeting. Do you want to see them again?
Yes, please.
Go right ahead. Put them up.
Can I get your last name, please?
Decain.
Decain.
Decain. Decain.
Last one. So, the ones on the bottom are,
Grab that mic, Tom, if you can.
pardon?
Just take that mic over to you if you can. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me. The ones down here are houses in the neighborhood?
Which neighborhood is that?
Oh, I don't know. And these up here are sketches that we did for the 38-foot wide houses. We now have houses that are considerably wider. So these were just some conceptual drawings that I had my architect draw.
And so, because I wasn't able to see, I guess, on these, the garages will not be facing County Line Road, is that correct? Or will they?
Well, it depends on which plan we have.
Okay. I guess, I mean, from an aesthetic point of view, I would be happier if the garages did not face the road. I mean, that's personally not very appealing to me, and I think it would be more in keeping with the community if they were able to be accessed. I mean, I guess this one possibly, I guess with Lot 1 possibly would have to, but if you could try your best to have them not face the front of the house, I think that would make me very happy. I mean, I know I'm probably a street or so away, but I guess I'm just worried about my property value. So I would like the most elegant facade possible, and if that's possible to keep the garages back, I would be happy. And then I guess there was a comment about, and I'm sorry, is the term by right, is that, so if that means that complying with all the regulations would the 12, are you saying that the 12 lot plan would completely comply in a by right manner?
Do you want me to address?
Yeah, let me address. I think what the applicant has told us the last few months is he believes if he did a 100% by right plan, there's probably a minimum of 12 lots that could go on this plan, if not more. We've not asked for that. It's typical of a developer to come in and kind of show us the max they can do, and for better terms, we agree to something less than that. So there's probably a plan that the developer believes he could do that would be more lots than this, but we have requested him to look at something that would be less than that. That's where we've gotten to tonight. So we've not asked for him specifically to show us exactly how many lots could do if there was no exceptions and an absolute by right plan.
Okay. I mean, I know we've all said that 10 is better. I mean, I guess I'm happier. I'm not exactly happy with the plan. I mean, I guess I'm happier, but I mean, it seems impossible for me that there would ever be 12 houses on that plan that could comply with all the regulations, with no, I don't know the proper terms, with no variances, no waivers, no whatever, that they would meet 100% of the regulations. So I just feel like, I mean, I'm probably not speaking for everybody else. 10 is certainly better than 12, but I still find that as a crazy amount of houses on that property, in my opinion. So I would still like to see it lowered. Now, I'm guessing that by the time we get to stormwater planning, I don't know when that comes into play. I'm guessing that there might be, they might have to revise their plans, and maybe there will in fact be fewer houses because of stormwater management or something to that effect. But I'm hopeful that might in fact be the outcome. I also wanted to read a letter regarding the sidewalk to nowhere. It's from my neighbor, and she sent it, I believe.
I'm going to ask if you don't have it in writing.
Well, it was sent to the. Let me find out.
If you can send it to us in writing,
Who does
I'd
it
like
get
to have it.
sent
But if
to?
it's, you can send it right to the board. You can send it right to the township,
Because she sent it
or bring
to.
copies here. But I really don't want you to read someone else's letter.
Okay, that's fine. She
Thank
sent it
you.
to the ward commissioners per the township buildings receptionist. Is that who it should be sent to?
Yes.
Okay.
It should have been forwarded to us. Has anybody received that letter? I don't know what word that
It's
is.
from Kate Wallace.
Yeah.
I guess I would just like to echo what she had said before, and there's another gentleman that said basically the same sentiments that I have about the proposed or the requirement for a sidewalk along Lancaster Avenue. I think it just encourages, it is a sidewalk to nowhere, and it does encourage people to walk along Lancaster Avenue, and then it would stop, I'm assuming, at Cushman Road, and then they would continue from Cushman along an, I guess, an unpaved across my property and my neighbor's property, which already has a path from people walking up and down. And I think that would only further encourage more people to continue along that path. So I would strongly urge if we could consider not having a sidewalk along Lancaster. I don't see any benefit other than, well, I don't see any benefit at all, no other than. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Then I'm back to the board for discussion, and I think I'm going to ask we kind of break this in a couple of sections. I think we have 3, maybe 4 major issues. One's obviously the 10 versus 12. 2 is the cul-de-sac on the 10. 3 is the whole sidewalk versus no sidewalk, and 4 I'll throw out there is other. So why don't we start with the sidewalks? I guess I'd like to hear everyone's opinion first on the sidewalk, whether we need 1, 2, or none. Anybody want to jump in?
Despite it's a sidewalk to nowhere, the idea is that it's a sidewalk to nowhere right now. It might not be 25 years from now. I, at the very least, would like to see the right-of-way maintained there so that a sidewalk, there's no question that there is supposed to be a sidewalk there sometime down the road. So that if they decide to build it in 20 years, there's a connection at each end. They just have to dig a trench and pour concrete. I would not want to have to go acquire the right-of-way, if you will.
Are you talking about the county line side or the Lancaster side?
I was talking particularly about Lancaster, but the other side, to some extent, makes sense for the same reason.
Who shovels the snow on the Lancaster side?
I didn't say build it. I said at least set the right of way aside so that down the road you have it, rather than have to.
There's no paved access across the back of the properties to the sidewalk. In other words, the houses stop at some varying distance from a sidewalk that those homeowners would then have to shovel that snow, I guess.
Wait till spring comes.
Yeah.
Sidewalks. I am normally in big favor of sidewalks. In this particular case, the south side of Lancaster has a sidewalk. I would much rather see Mr. Bentley restore that stone wall that's a really beautiful buffer to that property than have a sidewalk there, because I actually think the stone wall would absolutely have to come down in order to put in a sidewalk. And I feel the same way on County Line. There's a sidewalk on the other side of the street on County Line. And I guess, in these instances, I defer to the neighbors. I mean, they have a sidewalk on their street that they are very happy with. There is pedestrian access. Doug, I hear your point about not giving up right-of-way. And I would be okay with keeping it to hedge our bets down the road, particularly after what we went through on Newtown Road at a previous application. But I wouldn't require sidewalks on either one at this point. I would really ask Mr. Bentley to take a long, hard look at preserving that stone wall. I think it's really, I bet you that's probably pretty old and may even have some historical significance. One of the neighbors is from Villanova. He probably has some history about it. So that's my feeling about sidewalks. And I don't see the need for the sidewalks within the cul-de-sac. I'm more concerned about the turning radius in there and the street width with large SUV. None of these people really have driveways to park in for guests, so all overflow parking will be on the streets. And I think if I read one of David's notes, even the driveways are not even quite wide enough. He was recommending that the driveways themselves be a little wider. I think I read that note. So, wider or more narrow?
I believe I recommended they be 10 feet wide.
Right, and they're how wide now?
I think they vary, but
I think
they're
that's
typically about
the
8.5
other
feet, I
Right,
think.
8.5, right. So he already wants slightly, they're already kind of small driveways. So, I think that's...
So I think that's the other plan. I think that's the other plan.
Oh, okay, I'll reread my note. But in any event, that's how I feel about sidewalks, since you wanted to break it up.
No, they're not.
I agree 100% with Susan.
think I do also. Other comments on sidewalks? Anybody want to jump in?
I agree with Susan, but I was already there before with the snow.
I agree
Well,
with Susan
you
that-
convinced me with the snow, because you're absolutely right. There's no way to access it, so it's kind of pointless. But I just find it kind of ironic that we would force a sidewalk on Newtown Road where there's absolutely no sidewalks, and there's a bank, and there's trees, and everything else, that on Lancaster Avenue you wouldn't. But I would defer to you others here, because there's a sidewalk on the other side, and I guess we'll just let people keep walking on the dirt path there. And I don't really see the need for one on County Line.
I'm a big supporter of sidewalks generally, and I think the fact that people are walking along a dirt path tells you it's not a sidewalk to nowhere. People are using that as a walkway. So maybe we need a sidewalk for those people. I think that at the very least, we should have a paper sidewalk on this plan. If we're not prepared to ask the applicant, or to require the applicant, because it's a requirement, to put a sidewalk in now, you do not want to make the mistake in planning, which is the whole point of planning, is long-range planning and thinking, that we don't need a sidewalk and we're never going to need a sidewalk. This is never probably going to get subdivided again.
Mm-hmm.
There's never going to be another opportunity if we don't have a sidewalk in place, at least the paper part of it, the legal right to it now. You're not going to get that back ever. So I think that it would be a mistake not to provide for the right-of-way, the location of the sidewalk, but in terms of building it at this moment, if the neighbors don't need it and don't see a reason for it, and the fact that there's a walking path, a dirt path now is not a concern, I suppose. I haven't heard anyone say that that's a concern to them. Then I would not push to have that installed this time.
But you're okay with none on the county line side?
Oh, I think both. We
You
need
think both?
paper,
You would do them paper on both?
just in case.
Okay.
And I read that to be Susan's. That was Susan's comment, too. Paper on both, but no construction.
Okay. Let's move to the 10 versus 12. Any comments? The two plans we have tonight?
Well, I think the design of the 10-lot plan is certainly preferable to the 12-lot plan that we're seeing. My only concern that I'll mention again is that it seems as if the 10-lot plan is a compromise that the developer made with the neighbors and with the planning commission, because we had asked for certain things, based on the idea that his 12-right plan was by right. I don't believe that it is. So my only concern is that if the neighbors were told this 12-lot plan is by right, but there's some issues with it, so we're going to talk and we're going to make changes and we're going to do this 10-lot plan that needs some waivers and variances, I don't think it's a bad plan, but I'm worried that the premise that the neighbors were given might not be accurate. I just want them to be aware of that.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. I'm really glad that David, early in the night, kind of acknowledged that the 12-lot plan is not a by-right plan. Although I certainly understand Mr. Bentley's desire to believe that it is. And I don't really, I think that a truly by-right plan does not exist because of the issue of the collector onto County Line Road. However, which means that we would have to allow something because of MPC rules. However, my guess is that the true by-right plan on this property, when you take into consideration the steep slopes, because I have yet to see a plan that didn't have a house or a driveway through steep slopes. And Mr. Bentley, I strongly encourage you, if you believe that those aren't there, although Mrs. Hurl and I walked the property, as did Mr. McCone. But if you truly believe that, you may want to take the time to have your engineer relook at it. But I think the true by-right plan is more like 4 lots, which is very strange for this particular zoning. But remember, when this plan was first presented to us months ago, I said I thought the zoning on this property was wrong. I didn't think it was an R4, that this particular piece of property was inappropriately zoned. That was one of my very first comments when we saw this plan. That being said, 4 lots, I think, is about all you could get with the one waiver that you need. And so I echo Julia's comments about that the neighbors should understand that if you were presented at 12 was by right, I really get that 10 feels like a good outcome. We still have to look at it and make sure that 10 is a good plan. Is that the right number? And and take all that into consideration. So 10 is preferable to 12 to me. I truly think that the ideal plan is probably 8. That's my guess. That's my guess. Or maybe 6, but I think it's 8.
Other comment? Anyone?
Yeah, just I have a question, Mr. Penley, on the, any particular reason you just didn't come
Tom,
in
can I
here?
ask you, Tom, excuse me, can I ask you to put that plan back up on the, what do you look at, the 10 or the 12?
10.
Put the 10 back up on the table for everybody. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'll just describe it. Any particular reason you didn't come in where the cul-de-sac is now, just bring it in through 1 and run it all the way along the property lines between the front and the back, and then have it terminate at the far right side of the property as a true cul-de-sac. So thereby eliminating all of the access on Canyon Line Road, and by eliminating all the private drives, and everybody would have a conventional driveway on a regular street.
I'm sorry, I lost you.
Okay, let me just show you this way then.
Okay.
Come in here, in other words, let's take this and bring it here, and then run it down here and terminate it there.
Well, that
you
would
gonna
just
lose
be,
another lot?
that would be just shoving it to the neighbors, I mean, really bad. I mean, those are the closest,
To bring it in here and come in this way?
yeah, I'll show you right here.
Means come down lot 1.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a servant, okay? I am a servant that is trying to please the planning commission, please the neighbors, please the sellers, please my banks, please everybody. First of all, that would just be, those are our most sensitive point of our neighbors right there.
That property line would?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that would be.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, and the people that came to the meetings every time were those people right there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the main reasons. The other is, the cost of running a long cul-de-sac. By the time you got done with all that road, you'd have more road than houses.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Any other question?
I have other questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. But it's on driveways. Do you want to go to that now?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we go, everyone look at the 10-lot plan for a second. Hold that, Kath. We have a lot of discussion of the cul-de-sacs. I'd like to hear everyone's comments on the 3 issues on the cul-de-sac, which is the length, the 5 versus 7 driveways, and then the third, which is the radius, 32 versus 40. We'll start there, then we'll go to general opinion. Anybody want to jump in there?
Oh, and the cul-de-sac, I don't have a problem with the length. I would like to see the cul-de-sac a little larger, because I think even though you might not need it to turn around, there's going to be cars parked there, because I feel there's a lack of parking, especially for the interior lots, or the ones that are on Lancaster Avenue, which I wanted to get into about driveway widths. But I don't have a problem with 7 driveways onto the cul-de-sac. I don't have a problem that it's short. I think it should be built out to the width of the right-of-way on the cul-de-sac, so it will allow for more parking and access of the cars coming in and out.
Yeah, I'd like a larger cul-de-sac too. I think the parking is going to be a major issue.
Dave, does the change from 32 to 40 give you that additional ability to park on that cul-de-sac? Help us out there.
Well, it would definitely provide some more parking. I mean, I guess if we're trying to focus on parking, where we get our most advantage is maybe widening the throat, maybe from, it looks like it's currently proposed at about 24 feet. Instead of 24 feet, maybe we go to something closer to 30 or something. So we allow parking, along the tangent section of the cul-de-sac and not so much on the bulb. So I would say let's widen the tangent section first, and maybe we tweak the bulb a little bit, but I think I'd definitely focus on the actual tangent portion first.
Thank you. Other comments?
And you would do that without any sidewalks or anything along there, right? 'Cause
Correct.
you would
I mean-
take up what might be sidewalk by widening the thing.
I'm sorry?
You just widen the thing in lieu of putting sidewalks.
Correct. Since I think we're beyond the sidewalk, we're not talking about putting sidewalk there. Yeah, right. I think the right-of-way is fine the way it is. We just widen the cartway a little bit.
Thank you.
I think one thing to keep in mind with the parking is that lots 1 through 5 are probably not going to park guest cars in the cul-de-sac. They're going to park in their driveways, they're going to park on County Line Road. It's lots 6 through 10. They're going to be looking for parking once they've driven into the cul-de-sac. So putting the parking in the tangent portion of the cul-de-sac might not be as practical. It might be better to even, widen the private shared driveway going to the houses or some place closer to where the guests want to be, or in the bulb, because people are going to drive down into this bulb and look for a parking spot. But
Right. Well, I mean, if we make the adjustment that we discussed earlier, which would be having the access to lots 2 and 3 on the cul-de-sac bulb, I think then, of the 10 lots, 7 of the 10 lots will be, access from the cul-de-sac, and I think we would find people visiting those homes would park in the cul-de-sac. It would only be lots 1, 4, and 5, which would seek other avenues of parking.
I have a question about parking on County Line. Is it permitted right there? You've been working on the property forever, Mr. Bentley. Do you know if people can park on that side of the street on County Line?
It's 2-hour parking. My staff has told me 2-hour parking.
2-hour parking on both sides of the street?
Yes. County Line, Radnor side.
County Line, Radnor side, 2-hour parking. Not metered, just 2-hour signs. Great. Thank you for your help.
With regard to the driveways and the cul-de-sac issue, one thing that I'm noticing is missing off of this, and I recognize because it's sketch plan, is that I don't think all the calculations for impervious are here in terms of the proposed data. These say what they are permitted, but it's not saying what the actual lots are. And so, while they certainly look like they have enough room, by the time we do an extra, a wider cul-de-sac, which I firmly believe we need. I live on a cul-de-sac, and it's tight sometimes when there are several cars parked in the cul-de-sac, and then somebody needs to come down into our street to turn around, which does happen, and we only have 10 houses on our whole street. I think they need a wider neck. I think big old SUVs need a little bit of space to get up and down the street, or if there's cars parked on both sides and a fire truck needs to get down. I don't think that we can really make the waivers on the width of a street when we're talking about the access for emergency vehicles. I don't feel like that's not something I can support. So I think we have to be at what the minimums are for those. And then I would wonder what some of these calculations actually are, because I'm only seeing what the permitted numbers are, not what they are actually calculated to be. And I assume we would see those in preliminary, and that's why we're not seeing them here, and that's fine. I'm not upset about that. It's just in the back of my mind about where are these numbers, they're going to start to creep up to impervious limits. So that's my comment about driveways and the cul-de-sac.
I have another comment on driveways. On lots 10, 9, and 7 and 6, where they share a driveway, a common driveway into the houses, that looks just wide enough for one car to pass, period. I think that definitely needs to be made much wider, possibly to the property line, to the front of their property line, so that at minimum you have about 12 feet on that, where 2 houses are sharing the driveway.
Okay. Any other general comments? Sue, if you have all that, I think that closes down the discussion for this evening. Thank you. Thank you, sir. You want to make a final comment? Go right ahead.
I mean, if I judge the kind of yeses and nos, I mean, I think you're telling me to go ahead with the 10-lot plan. We certainly would like to have some kind of not a vote, but just kind of a motion, a thought process here.
I'd be more than happy to ask the board for comment on direction from Mr. Bentley in your own opinion, and I will start. Julia, on my right, go right ahead.
I think that the design of the 10-lot plan is good, except I'm concerned about the fact that you have houses and driveways on steep slopes, as I think Susan mentioned and a few other board members. That's not okay. And I think that we need to clarify whether or not those steep slopes are there, how big they are. You said you still need to look into that. So we'll be looking to see where that is. My other concern is I'm concerned about when the stormwater plan comes in, what that's going to show, because I'm looking between the density of the buildings and the driveways, including the widening of what we see here as the cul-de-sac and some of these drives, the amount of water that's going to be coming down here on such a small site with these slopes. Even, I mean, we talk about steep slopes as being these very specific steep slopes, but all of this is quite steep.
Yeah, Julia,
So-
we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit and had our soils engineers go out there and do testing, and we dug perk holes all over the site. We have very good soils. I mean, best practices today are to do underground beds and try and get the ground to penetrate into the ground, or the water to penetrate into the ground. And our soils test came back that we have great, good soil that will perk very, very readily. So
And that's what we're going to need to see. That's
what
going to be a concern
you're
to
going to
look
see
at
that.
this.
But what I'm saying is most of our retention will be underground and not visible. It will be underneath. So I mean, we think we've got that covered. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay, and I'm going to need to see
And,
that.
and we're going to. I know you're getting goosebumps just waiting to see it, but we're going to address that obviously at the next. Right now, this is just a sketch plan. We just want to know that we're going in the right direction. That's all.
Doug?
I like this much better than the 12. Like Sue, if it were fewer, I'd probably be happier, but I understand the situation. I did notice when I was out there that it's really steep, and I do get, like she gets concerned about where the water is going to go if you don't have it completely controlled on the site. Everybody else talk. I do like the idea of taking lots 2 and 3 and putting on the cul-de-sac, where it limits the number of stuff that you have on County Line Road. And I like the paper sidewalks too. Thank you.
Susan?
It's getting there.
Wow, I am just so happy. Thank you.
Kathy, I'll go to the other end.
Actually, it's not a bad plan, but as we say, it's getting there. I think my major concern at this point is the amount of parking available, because knowing what price range these houses will probably be in, there'll most likely be a few cars that the owners of the property will have. And then if they ever have guests, it's going to be a problem because you don't have a lot of options for parking. So I think you really need to take a look at the widths of the driveways that are off the cul-de-sac.
You brought that up the first meeting, and I know it doesn't look like it, but I told the engineers where there's 2 houses on one driveway to make it 20 feet wide. It may not look like it, but
it's not 20 feet wide on this plan.
Okay, well, somewhere along the line it was, and then it became not, but
Okay.
we will get that back on there.
20 feet is great.
Yeah.
At least then 2 cars could pass.
Yeah.
And one could park there and one could get by. So if there's any other creative means of handling
Well, it would
parking.
probably be appropriate to have like some kind of a pull-off.
pullover, something like that.
At the front door, instead of, not a circle or anything, but just, we'd have the turnaround to back out of the garage, but then to have another one where a guest could park.
And the other thing you might try on maybe some of the edges of these driveways is pervious, like maybe cobblestones. I'm not sure where Radnor is at this point. They keep changing on where are you with pervious paving? Is it allowed, or is it still considered
You mean
impervious?
like paver blocks?
Paver blocks?
Yeah,
something
I
like
mean,
that.
I think we probably can consider that. I mean, gravel is considered impervious, but I mean, something like a paver block, I think we could consider as
Where grass
partially.
would go up between.
Right, exactly,
Okay.
partially pervious.
Thanks,
Okay.
Kath. Skip?
Well, Kathy did hit my hot button area, which is parking. I think the cul-de-sac has to be bigger. And I do think the entire cul-de-sac has to be bigger, including the neck. I wish it were 8 lots, but I understand it's R4.
Steve?
I do share Susan's concern. I feel that we're flying a little bit blind, not knowing exactly what is by right. But on the other hand, I don't, from what I heard from our engineer, the variances you're requesting don't, pending all these suggestions we've heard tonight, don't seem very unreasonable. So, I'm more inclined to, go along with this kind of plan, subject to all the concerns that most of the other people have mentioned, cul-de-sac and parking and driveways, things like that.
I think all my comments have been already mentioned. I think the process has been excellent.
Thank
You've been here a couple of months. We've seen a lot of very, very different plans. I think from a developer's point of view in relationship with this board, you've listened. You've come back with some. You haven't come back with all, but I think that's how the process should go. So I've been impressed with the process and wish you luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a hand in the back. One more comment? We had public comment. Were you not here?
Yes, but I'm, as a result of what I'm hearing now.
Okay, I'll take one more public comment. Come on, come to the front.
Hi, I'm Carol Boslett. I live at 1421 County Line Road, which is, whoops, right there, at the point. Yeah. The eastern point on the other side of the street, on the main Montgomery County side. Listening to all this conversation now, I get the sense that we're just trying to make a imperfect plan work. I mean, paring a little here, taking a little off there, shaving a little here. The 12-lot plan that was presented to us, I think, was a maneuver. It was done to make us think 10 lots is acceptable because 12 was just too much. I get the sense that 10 lots may be too much because there is so much shaving something off this end and trying to get a little more space here because it isn't quite evident that you have it. I think you're putting, or we're trying, or Tom is trying to put too many houses in a given piece of property. I know he has said that he needs to build that number in order to make it financially viable. But caveat emptor, buyer beware. I mean, he knew what he was buying. I think your comment was right on, and yours when you said 8 lots. I think we're just looking at too many buildings in a given piece of property. And it seems rather painful the way you're trying to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the zone, well, a new comment?
Sort of, yes.
Come on up.
Again, I just want to echo that again. I agree that I think 12 was a maneuver, 10 we're settling on, but nobody really knows how many lots would feasible or would comply with all the regulations. We don't know. Everyone seems to be giving in and saying, oh, well, he was going to do 12, but 10 looks great. But I still don't think that's, I think we're giving too much. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. Well, maybe that's a little bit strong a word, but I don't understand why we're giving so much. We're just saying, okay, wow, 10 looks so much better than 12. I mean, why can't we force him to say, why can't you say to him, you need to show me what's going to meet the regulations, and then we'll go from there. I mean, I don't see why that's such a outlandish requirement. I mean, does anybody feel that's a crazy requirement to ask
It
somebody
doesn't
to
work
comply with
that
the
way.
regulations?
It's based on zoning. And a person is allowed, it's zoned R4, which quite possibly is the wrong zoning there, based on the neighborhood. But it is what it is zoned. So therefore, there's certain criteria that he has to abide by in R4 zoning, which he is.
And the R4 zoning would be,
About quarter-acre lot.
so that supersedes all other regulations?
That's the starting point.
Okay, but then if he can't, so he can build a quarter-acre lot by R4 zoning, but if it doesn't meet the requirements of the township by the engineering standards that you must have, X number of driveways or however many driveways emptying onto a
Well,
onto a
it's
road,
his,
then doesn't that?
it's his problem is making it work. We don't design it. He brings the designs
Sure,
to us.
but he hasn't shown us how it works.
Well, he's
with
working on
R4.
it. But you might not always like what you get, but it's based on zoning.
But I don't
If you're
think he showed
concerned,
that.
No,
but
he
it is. It's
hasn't.
law.
He hasn't. We don't. He has to show it. And your point is, he may not be able to show it, and we don't have to grant anything. But it's kind of been the township's position and the board's position to grant reasonable and insignificant, requests for those kind of variances and things like that in the past. And I think that's what we're hearing here when our engineer says that these are insignificant requests on the behalf of the developer. Then I think generally this board is inclined to go along with them.
Okay.
Mr. Kane, because the MPC in Pennsylvania, which is the Municipal Planning Code, strongly recognizes the rights of property owners. And the person who owns this property has a right to be able to develop it in some fashion.
And I agree with that,
No,
too.
but what's
Sure.
tricky about this, if Radnor Township had unlimited funds, we could theoretically say to our engineer, it's in our interest to know exactly how many is the truly minimum by right plan. So go ahead and spend the time and the money to design that and show us. But we don't have, no township has the time or the money or the resources to go ahead and design a plan. So all we can do is wait for an applicant to bring in a plan, and it either meets the codes or it doesn't, or it has waivers or variances or things like that. And we certainly could look at Mr. Bentley and say, Mr. Bentley, bring in a plan that is the minimum number of by right, truly by right. Applicants are going to, look at a plan and ask their engineers to design a plan in the way that's most advantageous to the applicant. That's their position. Our position is we have to evaluate it.
Right.
And because we don't have the resources to be the designers. Neighbors are certainly welcome to try to do that, I suppose, but then the neighbors would have to spend the resources to do that. But we can't. We just don't have that. And that's the challenge here. So we can only take a look at a plan that's presented to us, and we're not the designers of the plan.
Okay.
Last comment, also, we're an advisory board, so we don't have the final say. We are giving comments.
And then who does have the final
Right,
say?
this is just a sketch plan. It'll come back for a full development plan, and it'll eventually go to the commissioners. So it's just the beginning of the process. The idea of the sketch plan is to get some input so we can see, and we've made great progress here tonight in the last couple months of the things that both the township and the residents in that area want. So when we've heard less properties entering off of County Line Road, that's where I'm saying I think we've made great strides there. There's always the issue of saying, Mr. Bentley, go back and tell us exactly what you can do. He comes up with 13 lots.
Right.
They could all come off County Line Road, and that's something none of us would want. So
Right.
there's...
I realize there's give and take, certainly, but.
Correct. So the process will continue for a few months, and you're welcome to continue to come back.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
It'll also go from here to zoning, right? When we were
That's
finished.
true. Sure.
It goes to
I'm sorry, that's
zoning.
zoning too. Sorry.
Zoning, they're sort of advisory, but they're also quasi-judicial. They make decisions, and if we do something we don't like it, they can go to the planning, they go to commissioners. But if they do something they don't like it, they go to common pleas court. Okay, so that's where
Right.
the real tough part's from. So,
Just out of curiosity, too, when you're making a suggestion of increasing the diameter of, the radius of the cul-de-sac, and also widening the tangential part of the road, does that get recorded in minutes, or is that just a suggestion?
Yeah,
I mean-
it's a sketch plan. We give suggestions to the applicant. The applicant
doesn't
can take
necessarily-
all of them, he can take none of them. I
Okay.
think what this board is saying to the applicant tonight is we need to see more parking on this site, more ability, as Kathy has said, for cars to pass on the driveway. There are important things to us. The applicant can say, I don't have to do that, and he can file the application that way. That's his choice. But the idea here is to get our feedback. The sketch plan is not necessary. It's the applicant's choice whether they want to have a sketch plan or not. So it's his choice to get some feedback from us, to help make the process a smoother one.
Okay.
And those suggestions that we made are not something that is written in the code that has to be done. It's from the standpoint of making the subdivision work. We aren't trying to make it work so that he can get more lots in there. We're trying to make a better subdivision. so that the people who ultimately buy those properties can live in them comfortably, and there's no traffic issues, because those traffic issues or parking issues, if there's no parking there, are going to end up on County Line Road if they have a party.
Sure.
So the more parking you can keep on the site, the less impact it has with the neighborhood.
Right. I guess I was just hearing that it wasn't in compliance with what the code said.
No, not the parking was not. I mean, what I'm
Well,
saying
the
is what we
radius of the-
requested was outside of that issue. It was more like it'll work better if you do this type of thing, we feel.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move forward now to agenda item number 5, which we've changed slightly. It's now going to be the sketch plan for 40 Laurel Court. The applicant is here. Thank you for your patience. Tom, thank you also. And come on forward. So we'll treat this like a normal sketch plan, which means the application will present first. Then we'll take our engineer's comments. Then we will comment, or actually we'll take public opinion if there is any, and then we'll go to our comments.
And I just want to pipe in a tiny bit that I'd like to make sure the scope stays on what's presented. Okay.
We're good.
Go right ahead, Dave.
Again, Dave Falcone, here with Kaz Holloway. So the plans that I've rolled out here are the plans that were submitted in our packet to the Township with our zoning hearing board application. I'll give you a little bit of background kind of on how we got to this point and what we envision in front of us. But this plan originated in front of the Harb, as I'm sure many of you know. We've been there a few times. We've been to the commissioners a few times, and we've been to the shade tree a few times. Plan has absolutely changed at each step. Originally, it was an above-ground garage. The building as it is right now, as I'm sure many of you know, is the Luella Mansion. It's 25 apartment units. There's existing surface parking. There's also a 2-car garage that's existing. This top plan, again, which was submitted with your packet, is the existing conditions and proposed demolition. Even this plan, just at our last shade tree, has changed a little bit with respect to trees that are coming off. They've asked us to save a couple, and we're going to do our best to do that. So, but this is your existing plan. What the applicant, what Kaz is proposing to do, is to take those 25 units and make them 12 condos. Now, per the code, the 25 units would require 50 parking spaces, 2 spaces per unit. That's the zoning here. To bring that it's not compliant right now. There are not 50 parking spaces out there. The 12 units, the 12 condos, would require 24 parking spaces. That's per the code. The original application was for an above-ground 24-car garage enclosed. That was summarily dismissed by the neighbors, the Harb, the commissioners, anybody you want. We went back based on comments from all of those folks, and they said, do better, find out a better solution, specifically at the commissioner level and at the Harb level. From both neighbors, commissioners, and Harb members, it was pursue underground parking options. That's where we want you to go. Our initial testimony on that, our presentation to the Harb, was we'll pursue that to the extent we don't need to go and obtain variances to get that. We wanted to stay as zoning compliant as we could. We asked the township solicitor and the township zoning officer to review the concept of underground garages and whether those garages needed to meet the setback requirements for the district. We got in writing from the zoning officer an opinion. To everybody's glee, we imagined that we could go underground. We did not need to meet the dimensional setback requirements because it was a subsurface structure. So with that, we revised the plans, came up with an underground garage.
Is it 100% underground?
It's completely subsurface. So obviously there's an opening. There's an opening where the cars have to go in, and I can hear the size behind me, which I'm familiar with at this point, but the property is not a level property. it slopes down. So you can't, to put the whole garage underground, you'd have a garage that was sideways. So you had to level the ground and then put the garage under the ground. That's because of the drop. It would be similar to if you had a house that was on an uneven piece of property where you would have your basement would be underground at curb level, and then you can have access out the back without having, it would be open. That's the grade of the property. So in order to put the whole garage under the ground, we've had to create a level field, and the entire garage is under that field.
But how are you creating that? Are you digging deeper or are you building up?
We're doing both. So it's going to be level at the way that the property slopes. It slopes from, I'm going to say, the top of the plan down towards Lancaster Avenue, which would be at the bottom here.
There's a 6-foot slope, is what it looks like.
So putting the garage be level up here on the back end of the mansion. But if you were to build the garage straight across, it couldn't possibly all be underground because down here it's raised. The street is below, so it's all going to be grass, and it's going to meet grading per the code, but it's going to be grass. It's going to be not exposed.
But the back of the property is 6 feet higher. You're saying you're going to have a 6-foot hill in the front?
In the front? And
on the north side?
South side.
South side.
It's going to be grass. It will be a hill.
A 6-foot hill?
It'll be a hill. It'll be 4 feet, Kaz is telling me.
A 4-foot hill?
Yes.
Is there a 4-foot hill there now? I don't...
There's a slope. It's open. So there's nothing there now. What you have now is paving, some parking, which you can see, which is the crosshatch area, and an existing garage, which is here. So even to build, we had to make it flat, even to build a parking garage.
Or dig deeper to keep it at the... I mean, a way to avoid the hill would have been to dig the hole 4 feet deeper. But go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm just following the slope thing. I mean...
Yep, I mean, that's...
Yeah, that's...
I mean, that's why we're here, to certainly answer those questions. I have the engineer and the architect, so some of those things would be better suited for them. We submitted the plan. So the second sheet of the plan that was submitted to the commission here and to the zoning hearing board shows the underground garage. 24 spaces, 1 entrance. The plan as it was submitted, and I don't want to get too much into the letter until Mr. Lay has a chance to walk through it, but showed a 20-foot entrance. The entrance, we were in front of the commissioners. There was some neighbor comment. One neighbor particularly asked us to pursue tweaking the entrance to create better traffic flow, less impact. We presented this plan at the commissioners. They liked it. It was several feet lower. They asked us to drop the plan from the original plan that was approved by the HARB 3 feet to bring the garage deeper 3 feet. This has that. We've moved the entrance closer to the existing building. That allows for a smoother transition in. We've widened it per Mr. Lay's comment to 25 feet, but this plan here you see is 20 feet, and we'll certainly stick to that here. One of the big issues that we heard at both the commissioners and at the last HARB meeting was the grade, and I'll turn that to the engineer to discuss, but was the grading, the slope down at this end of the garage, which the far east side. That's where you've got your lowest point, which is here at 93 feet. And then you can see the elevation changes to 101 feet. It's at the very top of the street. So you see, that's 8 feet. So the grade is changing pretty rapidly there. So there was some concern about how steep that was going to be. There was testimony presented, pictures taken. about how high it was going to be. Was it going to be this big earthen wall that made it impossible to see? So all of those things resonated with the commissioners, resonated with Kaz. And they said, can you push it any lower? And Kaz said, I can go 3 feet lower to maintain the existing entrance to the building, which was important to the Harb, to Kaz. There's an existing entrance on the side of the mansion. We're tying into that. So in order to have the appropriate sloping, we were able to drop it 3 feet and still maintain that existing connection to the mansion, which was important. To that point, we went back to the Harb. The Harb liked it. Went back to the commissioners, and the commissioner says, based on this Harb aspect, we think it's good. Proceed and keep tweaking, keep working, and let's see what the Planning Commission has. Get it to the Zoning Board. And that brought us to you tonight. So sketch plan. We're just looking for feedback at this point. Like I said, Kaz has been very receptive to the feedback. It's been to the Harb, I think, 4 times, commissioners a couple of times, Shade Tree twice. So, and every time there has been a tweak.
Do you have any cross-sections, engineered cross-sections across the property showing the existing grades and the proposed building?
Angela, can you speak to that? Angela can speak to it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't have measurements and things on it. That's more of a yeah. I have the ones that are submitted with the plan. I wonder if you have any engineered cross sections that show the elevations and the numbers and. Because it seems like a lot of the comments have to do with the siting of the garage versus the existing topography, and it seems like that's where a lot of the issues have been coming up. Is that correct?
So it started. So the ball has not been stationary. It's been a moving process, and certainly as things get fleshed out, more issues present themselves in the neighbors' eyes and some to the township. Originally, with the above-ground garage, it was all about siting. It was all about green space, open space. That's where we started. So, and massing. Some real concern from the Harb, from the commissioners, from the neighbors. Massing. Do we really want a huge above-ground garage there? Is that going to be consistent with the historic nature of the district? They found it was not consistent, and they said, that's not going to work. So they thought about a couple different options. One being underground, one being maybe splitting up the garage, having several split garages as opposed to one large garage. Everybody's favorite from the township level was subsurface. There was no doubt. That was pretty clear to us. So that's what we pursued. Once we got the determination from the zoning officer, we said, okay, that was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah, the determination from the zoning officer on what?
On whether or not we could put the below-ground garage within the side yard setback and not have to comply with that. Because
you don't have to comply with the setback?
You do not, because it's below ground.
Who made that determination?
The zoning officer.
Dave, we have a south side elevation in front of us. I wonder if you have that same print that you could put up.
Yeah.
I think that's would help.
And
Well, I had it in my package.
yeah, and Dan,
Do you have that?
maybe if you could just speak to what the elevations are like now and what the change will be to them.
Thank you.
This is the one that you were looking at? South side?
Yes.
I don't have one with the garage drawn.
It's all right. We can look at it here.
I was delivery girl, and I delivered it to your house. No, that's better.
Dave, is this on over the what would be the roof of the garage? Is that sod? Is that what is that intended to be?
It's going to be soil with grass.
Just grass.
It's going to be grass. There's going to be, we have a landscaping plan, Cassie.
And that'll be basically a level surface with.
Basically level. This is, again, it's changed, but this gives you the concept. You're going to have kind of what we're calling this, yeah, it's more for over here, Cass, so that's.
That was the one before.
It's going to have this open green space, which we're calling the Victorian Park. We're going to have access from the side of the building. It's going to be out into the area. There'll be a kind of a congregation area down here, barbecues, what have you.
So it'll be usable space.
It's going to be usable space. It'll be open. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to be surrounded. And again, we've been to the shade tree a few times. The last meeting we were there, we're not going to have any of the larger trees on this end. It'll be the Coosa dogwoods, and that was at their recommendation. Be 16 of the larger trees. We're going to preserve the larger trees on the western side that are existing. So this is.
How are you handling ventilation on this?
There'll be an exhaust.
Where? Have you figured that out yet?
We believe it's going to be down on this end, but it's not finalized yet. Yeah.
I'm Tim Wentz. I'm the architect for this project. What we're proposing is a passive air vent, which will be at this location here, which is next to the mansion, and there will be an exhaust vent on the opposite side. There'll be fans within the garage that would blow out in the event that the garage needed to be exhausted. This would be on CO2 monitors. When the monitors determine that the CO2 level was excessive, it would then kick the fans on. Or sometimes what we also do is if the temperature in the garage gets excessive, that we will do that just to create fresh air within the garage itself. So there'll be one intake and one exhaust.
Any idea of the decibel of the exhaust fan at this point?
No. They're generally, the ones that we've installed in the past have been reasonably quiet because of the fact that the fan itself is within the garage.
Okay.
And then there's just a concrete shaft for the exhaust itself.
All right.
So there's 2 parking spaces per unit, right?
That's correct.
And then you would expect any additional guests, whatever, to park using the local streets? And
No, we're providing 3 additional spaces which are above grade.
Okay.
And they,
Where are those? There's too many plans.
okay.
Per the comment. So those parking spaces were added based on Mr. Lay's comments, so that they're on the revised plans, which we can show. But we figured we would let Mr. Lay present his comments based on the plans that he's seen, and then really in response is when we've revised the plan to show what we could do.
How many total parking spaces are there now?
Existing on
Existing.
16,
Okay.
25 apartment units. Yes.
And do you know the breakdown today of the apartments between 1 and 2 bedroom? Or 3 bedroom? Do you,
Yeah.
Cass, if you could tell us that?
Most of the units are 1 bedroom. They're under 800 square feet. Of the 25 units,
I'm Kaz Holloway, I'm sorry, excuse me. CF Holloway III and Company. Of the 25 units, most of the units, I believe 18 are under 800 square feet, and the remaining units are, there's a couple that are very large, that are like maybe 1,600 square feet, but most of the units are 800 square feet. But in the R4 section in this historic district, this is right outside of the Wayne Overlay District, which allows one space, which requires one space per under 800 square feet and 2 spaces over. In this district, you're required, it doesn't matter the size of the unit, you're required 2 parking spaces per unit, or 50 spaces. So the current parking on this property is, out of kilter by a lot of parking spaces.
Thank you. Dave, you want to go over your comments? Thank you.
Okay. My first 4 comments are very just sort of cleanup items, so I'm just going to skip by them and move down to number 5. Per the ordinance, again, as we discussed on the previous project, curbing and sidewalk are required along Luella Court. So, again, I would defer to the Planning Commission if they think that would be appropriate to have sidewalk along the roadway there. Number 6, the ordinance requires parking stalls to be 20 feet deep. The stalls that are provided on this plan appear to be, I don't know if they're dimensioned, but they appear to be 18 feet. So to meet the ordinance, they have to extend them to 20 feet. Number 7, as Mr. Falcone indicated, the driveway entrance into the garage is required to be 25 feet wide. It appears they made that modification. Number 8, in addition to the 2 spaces per unit which are required for parking, they're required 3 additional overflow spaces for a development of this size or project of this size. And again, as Mr. Falcone indicated, I guess they have a revised plan that's going to show that. But they would need 3 additional spaces, or a total of 27 spaces for this project. Number 9, now we're talking about the grading and the slopes for the proposed garage. This is not a formal grading plan. This is simply a sketch plan, but it appears, based on our evaluation of the slopes, taking the grades at the at the edge of road line and the spot elevations on the top of the garage, as are shown on this plan, the slopes are fairly steep. They're in excess of 2 to 1 around certain portions of the road, certain portions of the garage, especially down through this area here. It's quite tight. And what makes it even a little more difficult is there's a requirement that they can't be grading within 3 feet of the edge of road, so that's even going to tighten this area up further. So again, I'm anxious to see the revised plan to see how they address this, but that was our concern, that it looks like it's very steep in through this area here especially. And number 10 deals with stormwater. Again, this is a sketch plan, so it doesn't get into the details of stormwater management. But although this parking garage obviously will be covered with, will be green space, obviously it's only going to be 18 inches of soil on top of concrete. Very unique situation. It's hard to say, what the storage capacity and the filtration capacity of a minimal amount of soil that's going to be. So I think we'll really have to discuss how we evaluate that, how we value the stormwater management, and exactly what we do with that runoff. I mean, does it get conveyed off-site, and if so, to what system. I've been told by staff that a lot of the existing stormwater system through here is substandard. It's not working up to with the current loads. So, I mean, I think if we're going to be taxing it with additional runoff, I think there are some issues that may arise there. But again, that's more of a land development issue that we'll look to in the future.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Since it appears to be soil and grass and so forth, is it still considered pervious or impervious?
Well, I mean, obviously the ordinances don't address this situation
It's like
directly.
a green roof, basically,
Exactly.
which we don't address
So,
at
I mean,
all.
if it's done with the right soils, we probably can make something work here, but technically it would be considered pervious. It's not impervious. There's a grass area above there, so it's technically pervious.
Could you pick up some of that with like perforated piping underneath the soil?
Oh, sure. But then again, it's where do you take it to? I mean, that's the thing. I think we want to take advantage of as much infiltration as we can, but I think we may have to take some of that runoff away, and the question is, where exactly do we take it?
And you were talking about 18 inches of soil. Did you have a sense of a better number than 18 inches, like 24, 30?
Well, I mean, I think if it's 18 inches of sort of an engineered soil, you probably could make that work. I mean, so we're not talking about just standard topsoil. This would be more of a, engineered type material. It may work, but again, that's just something we'll have to consider. This is a very unique animal that we're going to have here. So,
just a quick comment. I'm on a different board in Upper Marion Township, and they're going to be planting medians, replanting them. We're pulling 24 inches of soil out for the plantings, and they're all shrubs.
Okay.
Other questions for Dave? Go right ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
This is all deemed to be underground, and therefore the setbacks don't apply?
The zoning officer has issued an opinion stating exactly as Mr. Falcone said, that the setbacks don't apply since this is underground.
Why would that be true? I can't imagine why the setback wouldn't apply.
I mean, that's his opinion, and I mean, because I think, if you read the definition of structure, it probably indicates that it only applies to things that are above the surface. So, I mean, in a situation like this, it's subsurface, setbacks don't apply, so.
Doug, I mean, I think
That comes to
setback,
mind.
I think the purpose of the setbacks are aesthetic, if I'm not mistaken, and if it's invisible below ground, then there's no reason for an aesthetic setback.
Yeah, here comes my question, because I didn't have the benefit. One of these plans did not make it into my packet, so I'm only now tonight seeing the visual of what the east side of the building is going to look like when the garage is done. Can we get a definition of what an underground garage is? Because a hill like this, that I'm seeing, that has steep slopes right up to the edge of the property, is not feeling like an underground garage to me. It's feeling like we're raising the earth to keep a building under earth, but that's not underground. This thing is a big hill that they're going to be putting in. And I actually have a copy of our zoning officer's letter. And, it's unfortunate he's left the township, so we can't clarify with him that when he made this opinion, was he aware that the structure was going to be looming out of the ground 4 to 5 to 6 to 8 feet? I understand you guys have made some adjustments tonight, it sounds like, but 4 or more feet out of the ground, is that truly an underground structure for his opinion to be even valid? Is there a formal definition of an underground structure, Peter?
Not in the ordinances. Since there is not one in the ordinances, you'd then have to go to general public, the general use of such a definition. I don't have Webster's with me or memorized.
But Susan,
we got in a bigger problem a few years ago with Brandywine building an above-ground parking garage, and we found out that much of our zoning code doesn't even apply because the parking garage isn't even considered a structure.
No, that I understand. But it still had setbacks because it was above the ground. Right.
But one of David's comments was that there's a slope issue. So I mean, they can propose anything they want, but they got to deal with the slope issue. We have an ordinance for the slope issue, and if they solve the slope issue, I mean, I'd like to see it, but I'm assuming if it falls in line with our slope issue, then that should be okay. That problem should go away. Now, I don't know if they can make it go away, but
Has there
So
been
it'll
a,
get
You have a
dealt with that
grassy
way.
slope that has a 4-foot vertical rise over some period of space, so it's fairly steep. If you did a grading plan like that during a part of a land development, no building underneath it, just that was part of your grading plan, it would just be considered a berm, or it wouldn't be considered a building looming out of the ground, is what I'm saying. It would be considered a berm, it would be considered a grassy slope. I mean, 4 feet. I mean, I think, I'd like to see more cross-sections so we can get a feel for what it would look like, what it would feel like.
But I mean, I'd have to go back to our grading permits. Do we allow berms of steep slopes within 3
Yes.
feet of a roadway?
Not within 3 feet, but they're allowed to construct slopes as steep as 2 to 1, 2 feet vertical, or 2 feet horizontal to 1 foot vertical. And
But set back from our roadways?
setback 3 feet. I mean, you don't have to abide by building setbacks or anything of that nature.
Okay.
You just have to stay 3 feet away from property lines and right-of-ways.
it's like our park on Lancaster Avenue with all the berms?
Bill Spengler's Park?
Yes.
Got it.
Any other questions for Dave?
I have a definition here of, if you'd like me to read it, of what a structure is. And there's one thing that's interesting here, and I'm kind of wondering about it. Do you want me to read the whole works or just the last sentence?
Last sentence, probably good
Okay. It's talking about a structure, what the definition of a structure is. An assembly of material forming construction for occupancy of use, and it names different things and so forth. Any man-made object having an ascertainable stationary location on or in land or water. So by saying inland, does that mean under land?
Peter?
I would probably say no, just because in cases such as this, tie goes to the developer. The other thing you also have to look at is you have to combine that definition of a structure with the definition of a yard, which talks about required open space. And unfortunately, open space is not defined, and so you have to figure out, okay, is what the applicant is proposing, is it open space or is it not on top of their building? I think as as the engineer stated, Dave stated, this is a highly unusual circumstance. And certainly the people who wrote the zoning ordinance never anticipated this. And certainly the definitions and the provisions of the zoning ordinance do not mesh well with this proposal.
I'm sorry, I would take issue with that. If it says in or on the ground, I mean, any structure that you're going to build is going to have a foundation which is going to go down into the ground. And therefore, any structure is by definition going to be in. So you're saying it's not, seems to
Well,
be
the question is then, is in the ground the same as under the ground?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the
I'm
question.
not sure, guys, we're going to settle that here. I
Right.
just wanted to hear your take on that, but we
But
understand
I
that's an
think,
issue.
I actually think, Doug, that the bigger question is here is whether or not, if the structure is under the ground entirely, does that somehow impinge upon the area being above that structure as open space? And I think Mr. Baumann, in reaching his opinion, decided no, it does not.
Well, it's not entirely underground. You've got the piece of architectural, whatever, gingerbread, if you will, over the garage door. And you've got the same thing over the exit doors from the pedestrian exit door. So at least a portion of it is not entirely under the ground.
Correct.
So therefore, you can't, that would eliminate that exclusion.
Those items are they're properly set back, I think.
Yeah.
I think they're further back from the street than the slope.
Than the berm.
There's parking spaces that are closer. Well, I guess not, maybe not. On second
But
thought.
I think my contention would be that the corners of the parking lot over where Luella Court on the east side curls around, it shows that it's within the 30-foot setback. Now, the idea that it doesn't have to comply with the 30-foot setback because it's under the ground, it doesn't, to me, make a lot of sense. I know that if at GSA we were trying to do that kind of stuff, I don't think I'd be tarred and feathered about something close to that. You know?
Is this a zoning issue or a planning issue?
I think it's a combination of the two.
Well,
Okay.
since Mr. Bauman's issued this opinion, it's not a zoning issue. Because Mr. Bauman's issued an opinion that says it doesn't violate the front yard setback. Therefore, there's no requirement for them to file for a variance to that opinion. If he said it does, if he said they do have to require the front yard setback, then they could have filed for a variance to that requirement, including their other, what else they've also submitted to the zoning hearing board. But since Mr. Bauman has issued that opinion saying they don't have to, there's nothing for them to appeal. And unfortunately, since he's issued that opinion, it's not an issue that's in front of this particular commission.
They do have the other issue of the expansion of the parking lot, though, in terms of it being an expansion of the non-conforming use, because the parking lot area is going to double. So that's a different zoning issue with regard to it.
I believe that's what they've applied for.
Right.
That's why this is in front of us.
Okay, got it.
Their application to the zoning hearing board is for expansion of a non-conforming use. So that is what they're going forward with.
Specifically with regard to the parking as opposed to an expansion of the use of the building itself.
Well, I think...
I mean, at least based on Mr. Bauman's letter to
Right.
Mr.
I mean,
Falcone.
I think he was considering the parking as part of the use, and therefore the parking is considered an expansion of the use of the site. That was my interpretation.
Thank you, Dave. We'll go to public comment. Any public?
Engineer speak?
Sure.
Angela, just to,
Why don't you do that first?
yeah. We're certainly excited to hear the public comment, but I want to at least get Angela to address some of these issues.
Hi, my name is Angelo Capuzzi. I'm with Chester Valley Engineers. We're working with CAS on this project. I wanted to mention one thing. Since your solicitor talked about ties going to the runner, there is a section in your code, and I believe it's in the section 175, which is the chapter regarding grading, excavation, and fill. And there's a statement in there in section 175-12A, which states that the maximum fill slope permitted is 1.5 to 1, not 2 to 1. So we have two conflicting criteria in the code, and generally speaking, the least restrictive is what is applied for developer standpoint. In addition to that, there is a further statement that says slopes steeper than that are permitted provided of one or two conditions are satisfied. The first condition is that the steeper slope, in the opinion of the township engineer, is safe. It won't create any nuisances or problems problems with sliding or anything like that, which would cause damage to streets or properties. And the second condition would be that a certified geotechnical engineer, professional engineer, prepares reports certifying or stating that that slope is stable. So that being said, in regards to Dave's comment on the slopes, we can comply with the township's grading requirements in that area. And what Dave is saying is correct. There's a small section at the corner of the garage, roughly 13 feet in length, where the slope will exceed 2 to 1, but it won't exceed 1.5 to 1.
If I can just address that point, I disagree. There's a difference between conflicts and ambiguities. If an ordinance provision is ambiguous, then yes, the MPC requires that the interpretation favor the landowner or developer. In this case, there's a conflict between two ordinance provisions, and our ordinances specifically say the more controlling provision controls. And so therefore the provision that the engineer was citing as being the more controlling and more restrictive provision, that's the one that applies.
But there are other requirements in that particular section regarding 2-to-1, the requirement of either the township engineer agreeing that the 1.5-to-1 slope won't be detrimental to health, safety, and welfare, or a written report from a professional indicating that slope is stable. They are also criteria under that section that Dave cited in his letter.
That might be
How big is the area that you're discussing? That
We're talking an area that's 13 feet long by about 6 foot high.
Okay.
And other sections, the rest of the site is 2-to-1 or flatter, correct. And again, in regards to Dave's letter, we did prepare a revised plan, which we brought tonight, but basically results is that we've addressed all his comments. Obviously, we still have to work on the stormwater management portion of it that would come with the land development application, and we will discuss with Dave the concern he has about the type of soils we use over the garage to make it as absorbent as possible or infiltrate as much as possible. And there are amended soils that are being used today for rain gardens and such like that, which allow infiltration to occur without having runoff problems. And I'd be glad, I know we'll be coming back in September, but I know you had some questions about cross sections through the sites. We certainly can develop those for you to show you exactly what the grades would be after construction. And the other thing I wanted to point it out, regardless of whether we're building a garage or not, if, let's say, for instance, we were going to build a parking area on that plateau, if you will, we would still have to grade that out relatively level. At some point in time, we would have to create a slope down to tie into existing grades. Basically, that's the same thing we're doing. The only difference is we're dealing with a roof of a structure and not a surface parking lot.
I have a question for you. I think the cross sections would be helpful. We could see the existing grades, and reaching out across the street to the neighbors would be very helpful, so we can get an idea of what it looks like. I don't know if you have that.
We have information to the other side of the street. I don't know that we have it onto private property, though.
Okay. Well, whatever you have would be very helpful.
I have a question for you on the roof that you're designing here. Do you have any experience with this type of roof as to its ability to perk and handle water? Have you installed any like this, or have you read about them or seen them?
The roof itself of the structure is concrete. It's not going to...
Well, I'm talking about what's on top.
But the amended soil, I mean, and you made the point about green roofs. The theory with the green roof is you put amended soil in that would allow infiltration, but in addition to that, you may have to add some landscaping or vegetation that absorbs that water. So one of the things that we have to investigate is whether or not that type of system would work well in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to comment that if you were going to just put a surface level parking area, the entire thing could be at a relatively modest slope. I mean,
Well, it would have
it's
to
going
be-
from the front of the property to the back of the property, an elevation change of, I think it's 8 feet is what it says. But over a 30 or 40 foot distance, that's going to give you a relatively small slope as opposed to a flat and then a relatively quick sharp drop off.
But the bottom line is there are situations where you would grade a flat area. It would be flatter than what's there right now for the extent of the parking lot that we'd have to construct. The size of the parking lot would be the same size as the garage. It would have to extend as far as that garage does to get 24 spaces in. And the driveway width and the spaces would be as wide as they are in this garage. We're not asking for any relief as far as the dimensions of the parking lot. So the parking lot would extend as far as this does. And there would be some slope at the end. You're right, there may not be as much slope, but there will still be a slope. And whether it's 2-to-1, 1.5-to-1, I'm telling you that we would comply with the township requirements.
Could you have made the underground garage 18 spaces and put 8 on top or 9 on top?
The garage isn't designed to take any traffic loading as far as I know.
You mean the roof of the garage?
The roof of the garage, yes.
So those 3 other spots that we haven't seen yet on that third plan are not on top of the garage?
Yes, we had proposed to put in 3 parallel spaces along the side of Luella Court on the north side of the property.
There's lots of garages in Center City that are 5 and 6 layers. Could you engineer the roof to take 10 cars on top and make the garage 18 or 19, whatever it is?
I don't know that we could ever get down to that lower level. We have requirements in order to get down into the garage. Our driveway has to meet certain.
No, I don't mean go another layer deeper. I mean have surface parking, park on the roof, so to speak, eat up some of the beautiful green space. I'm not saying that it's the only solution, but
I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't answer that question. Okay, I don't know what the implications would be with the design of the garage.
This question may have already been answered, but can you go down another 1.5 feet?
Well, that would be problematic. Given the location of where our driveway entrance is, we have to maintain certain maximum grades or minimum grades to get into that structure. And in addition, we have to make sure that we provide vertical curves at the top of the driveway and the bottom of the driveway so people don't bottom out when they go in and out of the garage. So right now, we're just about as deep as we can get without exceeding the township's maximum on driveway slopes.
And if you put the entrance on the other side?
Well, it would be worse as you go around
It'd be worse.
Yeah, because the ground's much higher there. The lowest spot is about
Is
quarter
the lowest
way
spot
around.
closer to the building or more towards the?
I'm sorry.
Is the lowest spot the eastern corner there at the southeastern corner?
Yes. And that's right on the curve. I don't know if that's a good place to put a driveway like that.
No, I understand.
But and the reason we pushed it as far away to the west is try to minimize the impact of people who live across the street.
The original underground parking garage that we had proposed showed the entrance down in this area, and we were told to move it.
Okay. Any other questions? We're going to go to public comment. Any public comment? What was presented tonight?
Both plans are there, so whatever they want.
Hi, I'm Susan Byrne from Luella Court. I don't really have comments because I'm not really sure what plan I would be commenting on. We just spent the last 4 or 5 days trying to figure out which one that was. So as I understand what we talked about today, we are going to definitely go back through in September to the same board, correct? And Kaz had provided us with PDF files for the May 17th plan. We'd like that to happen again, including any revisions, just so that we're not spinning wheels and wasting time. And that's pretty much my comment at this point. Thanks.
Any other public comment?
I'm Jim Schneller. How are you all? For no one else speaking, I thought I'd bring up something. The covering of the basement level. If you drive past or if you've been in the property, I made a point that that part of their gift, or the part of the HARB's grant of their certificate was the fact that there is existing subground windows on the south and on the eastern part of the eastern side of the actual mansion. So part of the grant of the HARB was that they be covered. In fact, the soil be raised almost to the level of the upper windows, which happen to be very deep and close to the ground. But I don't want you to think that this is just a completely ground and land development issue. It is historicity that comes to bear here, and I know that could certainly be bringing in a can of worms, but it wasn't a can of worms. And the only reason it went back and forth a couple of times was because of technicalities. All of this is to say that the mansion has been visible, and the part of the historicity was a revealed basement with very nice basement windows. So if you could somehow compare that to the fact that there is a great bulkiness here, and include that in your determination, it would be great. I'd also personally, I've traveled and I've used Luella Court and circled it for decades. I think sidewalks are something that's been missing there for a long time. So I would hope that they'd be continued, or that is included. The mansion was in fact a a walking and strolling type of arrangement. People came out to the country, they stayed at the Wayne Mansion, and they walked all over the place. I think that was pre-sidewalk era. Also, if I could, I'd ask you to ask strict calculations regarding the grade of the entrance, because if that's the reason, it wasn't brought up in the last proceedings. But if it's the grade and worrying about bottoming out, we've seen plenty of demonstrations. I'm sure if you watched, you're aware that there are some parts of the sidewalk that of the top of the garage that are up to 8 feet above current ground level.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Any final comments from board members?
If I could.
Go right ahead, Kat.
I think it's a very creative use of land, the Victorian garden up top. It's something that's new that we really don't have perhaps code to control, but I think it's a creative use, and I think it's more desirable than seeing a building there or a parking garage. So I kind of commend the developer for coming up with that and working with the neighbors. I especially was impressed with the hill of grass didn't really impress me. But I think once you add the shrubbery that you were talking about in your planning plan, with the sidewalks through it and the paths and so forth, it's very attractive.
I've only been on the board for a short period of time, but this is one of my favorite plans that I've seen in terms of dealing with this. I hadn't seen a lot about this in the press or before tonight, and I do like it. I do recommend that you look at more than 18 inches of soil. I don't think that's going to sustain the vegetation levels you want or provide the water retention that you're looking for. I was not seriously recommending that you have 8 parking spaces on top. I mean, I like the design better. I just was looking at the steep slope issue. But considering that park on Lancaster Avenue, I'm sure we could deal with some attractively landscaped berms here or something like it.
The uniqueness of the historical district means that not only is the building, of historic relevance, but also the neighborhood, the court as a whole. And this kind of feels like the plan we saw earlier tonight, where the 14 house plan was so unpalatable that the 12 house plan seemed somewhat palatable, which is making the 10 house plan feel like pretty good, when in reality, maybe they're only supposed to be able to build 4 houses, and so we shouldn't accept anything more than 6. And this is feeling that same way for me in terms of the historic district, which is we have this building that's a treasure that does need to be maintained and redeveloped. And the above-ground garage structure was so objectionable to the neighbors, to the historic district, to the HARB, to the planning, to the Board of Commissioners, that for many people, I'm sure that this underground structure feels pretty good. It's not doing it for me. These people in the district are going to come up the hill, and I've driven Luella Court, and yeah, there's a slope, but it's not a slope that I really notice. I'm not going to miss a 4-foot hill coming up the court. So it's a really big change to the historic district, and the historic district rules really do call for consideration of changes to the characteristic of the district that are above and beyond some of our other zoning and subdivision rules. And this isn't doing it for me at all. I'm actually worried about a little kid rolling down that hill right into the street that's right there. It's a small little neighborhood. I don't know what the answer is. I just saw this one piece of the plan tonight. I didn't get this particular piece in my packet. So I'm really thrown by the elevation of the hill. And it doesn't feel like an underground garage to me, which I watched the HARB meetings. I watched all of them because I wanted to be up to date on this. This feels like we've raised the earth to hide a building under some grass. And yeah, it's not doing it for me.
I would prefer to see it a couple more feet down if that would possibly do that. I understand the problems with the slope of the driveway and all that, but as she said, coming up the hill and seeing a 5 or 6 foot hill or whatever it ends up being, because it just, as she says, that doesn't seem to fit as well as it would be. I mean, if it were down further, you could put more dirt in the back, have a more gradual slope from one side to the other. I think it would be more consistent with what it originally looked like. But I'm also an engineer. I recognize that there are times where you're limited by what you can do.
I think the concept is a creative solution to the situation here, and I think it could work. And I agree with what Susan and Doug are saying. I'd like to see someone try to lower the parking garage a little bit more so that we can relieve those tight spots, perhaps sliding the entrance to the center of the building. But I'm interested to see what comes back next month.
Steve, come back to you.
Yeah, I think it's a good plan. I like the fact that, we're improving the property, we're eliminating surface lots, we're improving the parking situation, we're improving the density, we're improving the property. I think we're all concerned about this slope issue, and quite frankly, I don't feel like what's been presented tonight, it gives me enough information to actually truly assess what the impact of that is to the neighbors and as it relates to our codes and everything else. So I guess I'd really like to understand that better to be able to give you a better feel and read for it. Some of us are very concerned, thinking you've heard all the comments. So my sense is it's not quite as bad as some people are concerned, but until you can kind of explain it to us, we don't really know.
If I could just jump in with one quick comment. It might help when you come back again, when you do an elevation similar to what you had on the one plan that you were missing, to show landscaping with it. Because I think when landscape is put in and it matures a couple years, you're really not going to see the hill that much. Right now, it's a pile of grass, so you see a mound of grass. But if you get some bushes in there that are attractive, I think a lot of it will be camouflaged by that and will eliminate a lot of the impact of a mountain of grass. And if it's only 4 feet, that's the height of this podium. That's not that much. And it can easily be camouflaged by shrubbery, because we use berms all the time that are 3 and 4 feet high as buffers to other things. So I think if you show that with landscaping and make it landscaping that can actually grow in shallow dirt, we get a better idea of what it looks like. Everybody would.
Thank you, Kath. Skip, go ahead.
I had a quick question, because we haven't seen that elevation with landscaping. Is this available to the neighbors in some way? I mean, is this fenced off, or do they have access to this green space?
Right now?
No, will they in the Victorian Park? Will they be allowed on the property?
So it's ultimately going to be subject to a condominium and a condominium association, and it's going to be their property, and they're going to make the decision, not the developer. So it's going to be private property just like it is now. It's my understanding that the neighbors use it now. Ultimately it's going to be conveyed, and it will be subject without question to a condominium association and bylaws, and it will be, as every condominium association will determine how they want to use that open space. That will not be CAS's decision.
Let me ask a different question. Yeah. Is there going to be any privacy fencing in your plans?
I don't think we show any
will it be at least open to look at, if not walk through?
The only fence that we have is above the garage opening and above the egress, the emergency egress opening, and that's by code. We have to prevent for safety. We were not proposing any fences around the property. Everything that we heard at Harb from the neighbors, from the commissioners, was everyone wanted to be able to enjoy the space. And by eliminating the existing two-car garage, which is, if you drive up there, it stands out like a sore thumb, and it's much higher. The grade I'm talking about is under the siding that is on the existing garage. The garage has a stone base and then has siding up to the roof, and the level of our yard or open area is under that siding. I think that would be a good visual for anybody who would like to drive through there and see it. So I know that to answer the question, though, our plan is to landscape it and leave the view shed open and not to have fencing. Now, of course, as Dave said, the association, once the homeowners take possession of it, it's up to them, and I see them as being 12 new neighbors with the existing neighborhood, and that it kind of evolved to everybody enjoying the visual as well as the use of that space. So, but that's something for the new homeowners to decide, not for me.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Can I make one more statement?
Sure.
Just in response to Ms. Stern, I think it's important, because you said you felt like this was similar to the last application, some type of dupe or a bait and switch, or here's the worst thing that you could get.
I didn't use those words.
But whatever it was, you felt like it was just like the last application where we gave you something that was not palatable, only to push something that was. But we pursued the above-ground garage very aggressively because we did not think we could get the underground garage. And we responded. We went to the Harb twice with 3 different variations of the above-ground garage, lowering levels, changing facade, changing sight lines, because we thought that was the best possible thing we could present. So we pursued it in good faith. We really did. And we thought this was in response to reasonable comments and then a favorable township resolution. So we thought we'd pursue the other option because that's what folks asked us to do. But we really did pursue the above-ground garage. I mean, if you go back and watch the meetings, we pursued it hard. We appealed the decision to the commissioners and presented the same case there. So we thought we had a good plan with that as well.
I didn't characterize it that way. I know that there have been many, many, many conversations about just simply enhancing and having a simple surface parking. And I've watched the conversations that Mr. Holloway, and his business decision is one that he feels that that's not something that his clientele would be interested in.
Surface parking.
Surface parking, enhanced, beautified surface parking. And there's pros and cons to that. I understand that. So just be careful not to mischaracterize, because I didn't use those words, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, I will just say we did pursue the above-ground garage in good faith. That was a viable plan, and we were not really asked to pursue surface parking. They didn't think it was great. One of the neighbors actually suggested terraced parking. I don't know what the exact term was, and one of the members said, well, I wouldn't support that anyway. I don't think that's a good idea. So we pushed the direction which we were asked to push, and we pursued that as best we could.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for the change of direction here tonight. I'm going to move to item number 6, any old business? Any new business?
I do have one quick question.
Go right ahead.
Do we need to have a vote for a new vice chair?
Yes.
Okay.
And chair.
Oh, and chair. Okay.
Okay, technically, I'm temporary. So we
Okay.
need to have that discussion. If we want to do that tonight, or you want to do that?
Oh, no, I think it's late. I
Prior
wasn't
to-
here last month, so I didn't know if we discussed that.
We should do that. Everybody should think about it. And
Okay.
maybe what we'll do is get together early for, 15 minutes, 20 minutes for the next meeting and have that discussion. And we'll go from there. How about this discussion on sketch plans and public comment? That's our decision.
I'll speak to that if you want me
Go
to. I think it's really important, especially at the beginning of a plan, to have public input, because it might change the direction of a way a developer approaches something. So I think it's a waste of time to come in with a preliminary plan when they could have said something at the sketch plan and, might have changed the direction. So I think it's always important to have public input at every level.
But today, the sketch plan does not have to go to the public. We see that for the first time. So my only concern would be the public's going to see it for the first time. We're going to get a lot of knee-jerk reaction. That's my only concern.
That's a possibility, but I think it's something we need to deal with because I think they have a right to speak.
I almost always agree with Kathy, but I disagree with that. I think a sketch plan is a sketch plan. We get to look at it first. We make comments. There's a complete other opportunity for the public to weigh in on something that we've hopefully fixed up a bit.
I'm going to agree with Kathy on this, and I think I take issue. I mean, I think I notice what Peter said, and maybe even David, is that no other townships around here follow our suit of not allowing that public comment. And I think the knee-jerk reaction is going to be there at potentially any stage, and I am happy to hear their comments early so that big issues can be dealt with in the early stages.
Peter, how do other townships handle that? You're getting a plan that comes to the public first, or coming to a board first. The public hasn't seen it yet, or do they see it?
To be honest, I'm not very familiar with whether or not the public sees a plan or not beforehand. But certainly in every township, my firm represents, every township I've ever been in front of for, a private party, public comment is allowed in any stage of the land development process, be it a sketch plan, and there's some places that have like a pre-sketch plan process. It's it's allowed, and that being said, even if you don't allow it by law, you have number 8 here, public participation. By law, you have to allow the public to speak on any on any item in front of you. And so, if someone wants to come up and talk to a sketch, on a sketch plan, they could, and you'd have to allow it, for that, that portion. But yeah, normally, people are allowed, and certainly in my experience, most people don't look at the plans beforehand. They don't do their homework. They hear about the meeting, they get worried, they show up, they see the plans for the first time at that meeting. Sometimes they might talk to the developer before the public meeting even starts with questions and things, or talk to them after with questions. But usually they do see the plan cold for the first time. And yeah, you do sometimes get knee-jerk reaction. But in part, that's what the sketch plan is for the developer to, calm down those fears and to kind of say, whoa, wait a second, let me explain that and try to deal with those issues that the neighbors have. And certainly I see when plans come back over a series of meetings, I always see the number of people showing up dwindles, which, I take to mean, okay, their fears and questions have been answered. They might not be happy, but they're satisfied, and they don't feel the need to come back. But I think, as I think I told you before the meeting, you have this as a public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is to allow the public to participate. So certainly my recommendation would be probably to let them speak. Makes the meetings longer, but I think in the end you might get a better product.
And I believe years ago that there was public participation on sketch plans.
I think the other point that we need to make here is that allowing public input on sketch plans, which is, I agree with Susan and Kathy that that's a fairer way to do things, would be better than making exceptions on occasion and allowing it. Because that seems unfair to me. Like in this meeting and in a previous meeting, one other time I remember from the past, at the request of the commissioners, we allowed public speaking at a sketch meeting, but we don't do that for other people. And I feel like whichever way we do it, we should stick to one method. I personally think that there should be public input at the sketch plan level. I think that the downside is, sometimes you might get a really long meeting, and it's worth it to me to have, to involve the public as much as possible to sit through a long meeting. That being said, I think I've been at meetings where we've had to ask the public to stop saying the same thing over and over again, to keep it civil, and I think that's okay. You can direct the tone of the public comment if necessary. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often, but it happens.
Certainly does. Okay, any other discussion? Any public participation?
Can I?
Go ahead.
I was going to make one other comment. I said I'm a liaison of the Shade Tree Commission, and they're just about finished revising a proposed shade tree ordinance. And I thought they would, is that something that we would, suggest that we introduce rather than them? Or is this something we would want to talk about?
I don't know.
I don't mean tonight, obviously.
Peter, is it?
Yeah, I unfortunately haven't been here enough to tell you one way or the other.
Well, then I'll ask you.
Certain townships, almost every ordinance goes through the planning commission for review and comment. In other townships, it's strictly zoning and saldo and nothing else.
All right. Well, then I'll just ask the question next month, and you got 30 days notice. Thank you.
You're looking at that, Peter. That'd be
I
great.
will.
Now, public participation. Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Kathy Sonier. I'm at 14 Cornwall Circle, and appreciate the opportunity to make public comment. I know it's been a little bit of a long evening. I'm actually here representing 54 other residents and constituents of Radnor Township, actually on the Eastern University matter. And we did know that the matter was removed from the agenda, but we actually saw it as an opportunity to kind of make our public comment known prior to the September meeting. And basically, the crux of our comment is we do have some concerns with the interior loop road. That's part and parcel now of the student center plans that we presume will be discussed next month at the Planning Commission. And what we wanted to say is we recognize Eastern has a bit of a dilemma now. They have offered to close down the parking lot to the Fenimore entrance in response to some concerns from some of the neighbors. And we appreciate the fact that they're trying to be neighborly and make sure that the neighborhood is comfortable with their plans. Now they've created a bit of a problem for themselves because now they have an abandoned parking lot that they need to find a solution to. Our position is that their proposed solution creates another problem for a larger set of neighbors, and we're here representing those neighbors this evening. And basically, just to give you a little bit of background, we live adjacent to the college. Our backyard butts up against the college. We are probably on that campus almost every day. We have 2 small kids. We're over there all the time. We think it's a tremendous asset to the township and to the community. And in general, we think the plans for the student center make a lot of sense. Their students deserve a place to gather, to have a decent meal, to hang out, and we recognize Walton Hall doesn't serve that purpose. So we think it's appropriate that they've submitted these plans for improvements. However, we feel like now what's happened is we've gotten coupled with those plans, the plan for the interior loop road, and they're kind of traveling hand in hand, even though our opinion is they're apples and oranges. We think that they're separate issues. The parking lot services the athletic fields and the gym. It will not service the student center. There's no residential student parking permitted in that parking lot. So from our perspective, they're 2 different issues. And we're trying to ask the township to basically consider the issue of the loop road as its own issue. And our concerns are essentially primarily environmental. Those are wetlands. Those are watershed areas that the school has spent a lot of time and money restoring. They're beautiful. In the course of speaking to our neighbors and the 50-so people that we've met over the last few days, people are over there running, they're walking their dogs, their children are over there playing. We see it out of our bedroom window. We see it when we're over there. In the summertime, there's more residents than there are students on the campus. So we're also concerned about safety. We're concerned that the area where the road is being proposed, highly pedestrian right now. They're walking paths. People are fishing, ice skating. They're utilizing the land all the time, the benches, and so we're also concerned about safety. But quite honestly, it also comes down to aesthetics. Our opinion of 2 people, but we feel like that portion of the campus is probably the most bucolic piece of property in all of the township. No offense to any other park, but it's historic, it's beautiful, and when we've talked to the residents, everybody has a story about that campus. We know somebody who came back from Ohio and got engaged on that campus. She was a resident of the township for 25 years of her life. We met a woman who now lives in Malvern who grew up going to the swim club there and was very disappointed to hear about the plans for the road. Just so many stories of the last few days and talking to people about memories and history of what they've enjoyed about that campus. And we feel that running a road right through the middle of it is going to prevent future generations, our children, our neighbors' children, from having those same memories and those same experiences. So what we're asking of the township is to consider our petition. We put together a petition. That's how we've collected 54 names. If 54 is not an impressive number, we'll go out tomorrow. We'll get another 54. This time of year is clearly a big vacation week in Radnor because we got a lot of empty houses when we were knocking on doors. But we're happy to get as many signatures as you think would be meaningful. But what we're asking for is the township to consider the alternative solutions. We've spoken to the engineer from Eastern. There are other options. In particular, there's an option that utilizes the entrance that goes into Key and Guffin Halls that could potentially come down to the left of the field hockey field right into the parking lot. No watershed issues, no pedestrian traffic issues. So that's one particular solution that we would like to see more fully vetted before the commission considers and votes on the interior road plan. And that's my statement. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.